don't have a case. If you've got a case, you keep your mouth shut, present it to the grand jury, and see what they do. Under the federal system, it is a crime to reveal the testimony before the grand jury until such point as the witness in question has testified at trial, at which point the defendant is then entitled to get a transcript of the witness's statement, testimony before the grand jury. All right?
Right.
This crap they're doing now is so far out in left field. I wonder if anybody involved is actually a prosecutor and or went to law school. Okay?
Right.
I mean, it's just goddamn garbage. The testimony that is supposed to go in front of a grand jury is secret for a number of very good and firm reasons. To sit here and not have a case that you can present to a grand jury, but to start revealing the statements of witnesses that you intend to put out is just so much garbage. You know what I'm saying? And like, it just fits in with this political mess that we have had developing over the last 30 years where, is rumor, innuendo, speculation, and it's
Yes.
just tabloid journalistic style applied to the legal process. You either do or you don't.
Well,
If you
isn't
don't, you keep your mouth shut because all kinds of scandalous stuff can come up during an investigation that you can't substantiate. It's just bad.
so? This is basically them trying this in the court of public opinion.
Well, not just try. It's nothing to try. What it is it's the opportunity one political party is seizing upon to scandalize and besmirch another person. Forget the fact that it's Trump. It could be done either way. The Republicans did this some years ago with Bill Clinton, you know?
Right.
And here's the other thing about the whole impeachment process. Impeachment is the return of articles of impeachment by the U.S. House of Representatives.
Correct.
If they do return it, it's like an indictment, and it has to be tried before the U.S. Senate, where they have to get a two-thirds majority. Now, do you think in this day and time you're going to get a two-thirds majority of the Senate? No,
No.
because it's majority Republican anyway.
Right. So then,
But that only gets you, even if you got all the Republicans, that only gets you 51. You'd still have to get 52. That still have to get a total out of that. Two-thirds of 100 is essentially seven, well, is essentially, what is two-thirds? Yeah.
so, so, but what I'm saying is that doesn't this basically set up a dangerous precedence when we start playing these little
Yes,
political
it
games?
does.
So the next time when it's a Democrat or whatnot, who heavens knows. So the thing about it is, what can we do or what should we do as citizens? Just totally disregard all this nonsense going on about our
Just
business?
disregard it. It's just sick nonsense. And I used to use to illustrate the point years ago when this kind of reporting, this kind of thing was with National Enquirer, Globe, or the Star. I kept the National Enquirer front page from two different editions of the paper. One of them said, "Boy, half pig, half human, born in barnyard. Loving a couple adopts infant." And they had clearly airbrushed the pig snout on this baby's face. 2 years later, they said, "Loving couple has achieved amazing success raising hybrid boy, half pig, half human." And they had a 5-year-old with a pig snout airbrushed on his face. Absolute garbage. But they printed it on the front page, and now that kind of thing is mainstream.
Because it's a freak show. Everything is a freak show.
It's a damn freak show. The First Amendment was designed to ensure freedom of the press under the theory that A well-informed population was necessary to carry out the governance process.
Right.
But the press is no longer focused on information. It is focused on entertainment, and that
Yes.
started thanks to CNN about 30 years ago when they went to a 24/7 format. CNN was about to go belly up because the traditional reliable news reporting just didn't work with 24/7 because there wasn't that much news. But then they had the first Gulf War, and when you got a war that's hot and heavy and the whole thing is new, then you can get 24/7 news, and that saved them. And they quickly switched over once they had gotten a reprieve to news being an entertainment feature. You got the talking heads speculating and spreading rumors instead of focusing on an editorial analysis of the
Yes.
news, which was presented in an accurate and reliable fashion, with the other stuff reserved for the editorial commentary. Everything became quasi editorial, but it was just speculating to keep the public tuned in to keep the ratings up.
Now, what about like remember that movie Aaron Russo's Network, where he talks about the reason why the news people became entertainers. And it's just like you said, to put dollars into the, I guess, the corporate parent entity that owns it, right? So now, wouldn't it be safe to say that all of our news is coming with the slant of how it will benefit the um, the corporations that actually owns the
Oh
newspapers?
yeah, they make money off of it, and they have to keep the ratings up to keep the commercial advertising dollars flowing in. But there's a more profound thing behind it. 2,000 plus years ago, Julius Caesar, when asked by Mark Antony what he thought the Roman mob would think about him being appointed dictator for life, Caesar is purported to have said, "Give them bread and circuses, and the mob won't care what is done by their betters."
That is
The
so true.
mob was just the Roman population. Uh, and by bread and circuses, he meant keep them fed and entertained.
Yes, and that's what we're
And now
doing.
people are well fed. And if you turn on cable, satellite, or whatever, you see thousands of channels available, YouTube and Hulu and every other damn thing to keep them entertained. They don't read. Used to be you'd read a book or a magazine article. Nowadays, you listen to YouTube and you listen for an hour and a half as somebody blathers on something that could have been reduced in essence to 5 minutes or less worth of reading.
but, but see, Judge, that doesn't get you YouTube advertising dollars if you're sitting there reading. No, they need the
I know.
glitter. They
And
need.
people are always sending me, "Judge, check this out." I'm not looking at a YouTube article item that's an hour and 10 minutes long. What does it say?
Mm.
And then when you get through, it can be said in 3 sentences or less.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's very important for us to get back to this notion of it's not about the glitter bug. You know, it's not about the shows. We really aren't actors. We are just human beings, men and women, trying to live our lives. But it's like now, like we just said here, there's really no place for people who realize that they're ignorant to truly get accurate news, other than reading. And half of them don't even know
And the
what
other
books to get.
thing, one other thing, I don't mean to interrupt, but one other thing needs to be interjected. This feminization of the public in terms of emasculating it
Mm.
is bad because it has reduced the component that focused on logic, rational, reasoned analysis, which are perceived in certain quarters as masculine attributes and therefore bad.
Right.
And it focuses on the emotive state of something. Oh, I want happy news. I don't want all of this depressing news. That kind of thing.
Mm.
So you tend to focus on the emotive aspect of a thing rather than on its clear factual presentation.
Exactly. You know, it's sort of like one of the very first interviews I done with you. you was talking about how in the old days, children actually were taught laws that pertain to, your ability to stay out of jail versus going to jail. And they took that out because, as you stated, it would be too harsh for the children to understand the cruel realities of the world in which they have to dwell in.
Yes, but they have to face it anyway, and they're ignorant and unprepared to deal with it. How can they do this? Like on my show. But she feels so strongly about it. Look, excuse me. What you're trying to get me to do is gloss over the fact that this damn fool that you seem to be pushing, this woman, fired 5 shots at this man because she was mad at the man daring to file for a divorce against her daughter. The daughter is just as crazy as the woman is, and I see why he did it. If she had just if she had just been a little bit more accurate in her aim, she would have killed him and been looking for a first degree murder sentence because she plotted to get him over there. As it was, she got convicted and put on probation for aggravated assault.
Mm,
But you want me to sit here and mislead the public into taking the side of this damn fool who decided she was going to murder this man who just happened to be quick enough on his feet to dodge her aim.
that's
What
wow.
in the hell is wrong with you? But she was really emotional. So goddamn what?
Exactly. Exactly. Emotions doesn't mean that you, just because I feel a certain way, Judge, I have the right to steal your property, to harm you in any kind of way. Oh, Judge said a couple of words to me, so now I just lose total control. It's sort of like the N word thing, the saying the word. When I grew up, right, we, like in my area, kind of rural area, we didn't refer to each other as blank this or blank that. We were, when a white person was to call us that, we thought, okay, this is game time. They just want to fight. You call me a nigger, now we're gonna fight. That's just how it was played out. But now that word has been so twisted and distorted that you really can't even say it.
Would you know where it came from?
Where?
I saw it nascently when I was recruiting for college back in the 60s in some of the worst projects like Nickerson Gardens in the Los Angeles area, all right?
All right.
By some women who were not good persons. They were relying upon keeping their birth rate up so they could collect an ever larger check from the state.
Mm.
And then I started seeing it when I moved to Memphis in the 70s. I was the public defender, and I had all these white employees that were scared to go out in the black area. So I went out, and I was the only black in the whole damn thing. We had 2 investigators, and damn near everybody else was white.
Mm.
Okay? So I went out there, and I started walking in. And I hate to use the word, but I'm going to illustrate the point. I saw 4 and 5 women sitting around in the kitchen of an apartment, 2-story apartment in the projects, all right?
Right.
They're smoking with all of these snot-nosed little brats running around that needed to be bathed 2 weeks before I got there. And they hadn't been. They were dirty and they smelled. And the place was unkempt, and the women who were having 5-year-old boys running around, but they were only 19 years old, okay?
Wow.
They were smoking away, and they had a can of Schlitz malt liquor, 16 ounce in one hand, cigarette in the other. And they going, hey, you little black ass nigga, you just like that no good fucked up daddy of yours. Yeah, you little nigga ass, bring your little funky motherfucking ass up in here. You ain't shit. You ain't gonna be a goddamn thing, no way. Just nothing but another black ass nigga running around here all fucked up.
Damn.
Okay?
Damn.
And these kids grew up. Now that was almost 40 years ago. Well, it was 40 years ago. And now those little 5, 6, 7-year-old boys are 47, 45, 46, 41, 43, they didn't have any fathers around because right at that time, juvenile court was cutting off the checks if they had any indicia that a man was hanging around the premises.
Yep.
One or two of the 5 or 6 baby daddies involved in the household were trying to be good dads, but they ran them off.
Yes, they did.
And what happened was these 40-some-year-olds grew up with mama saying nigger this, nigger that. Now they have got grandchildren themselves because they bred quickly and early. And great-grandmama, who shouldn't be but a grandmama, started this crap. And see, I've seen this thing spread where the N-word just gets used so badly that I was in Sydney, Australia one time in a nightclub. And I'm looking around, there's no black folk in there. And white boys saying, hey, Tommy Moy, that small nigga, yeah, come on up here.
I know. It's like a virus.
And it spread. And now, hey, man, I'm in a restaurant, and Memphis has become a majority black town. It's the largest majority black city in America, all right?
Wow.
And I go to the parking lot. Hey, nigga, what's happening, man? Hey, nigga, what's happening, man? What can a nigga do to get some, hey, man, some attention, man?
Wow.
What in the hell is wrong with you?
Exactly.
And this boy didn't have a daddy. His daddy didn't have a daddy. His granddaddy didn't have a daddy. And his fucking goddamn granddaddy ain't but 40-some years old.
Wow. And the woman emotional mindset is ruling the whole family's mental state.
Yeah, and let me just be correct. Not granddaddy. His great-granddaddy ain't 50.
Dang.
We got motherfuckers up in here that I have encountered that are 37 years old with 54 children. Ain't paid a damn dime in child support, but they got 57 children, 54 children,
How do they do
53
that?
children.
How do they
The
not
local
pay child
newspaper
support?
ran a special on men with 50-plus children that they had discovered in the area.
I don't get that, Judge. I don't get how they're able not to pay child support on that. I don't see how they don't.
Well, they see it's like they don't give a damn. Okay, one of these sluts breeding cows that's got a bunch of babies by this kind may have 9 different kids by 6 or 7 different babies' daddy.
Dang.
2 of them got her knocked up because she just gave it up all night on purpose at a nightclub, and they pay child support. The rest of them are in and out the damn penitentiary. They don't pay a dime.
Dang.
And then the local juvenile court keeps the money in an interest-bearing account for 1 year, and then they tie it up and they delay 1 year in paying in a currently paid child support payment. So, and when they earn all the interest they can on it, they put the interest and the principal in a non-interest bearing account that is kept at a bank called First Tennessee, and I got to see it some years ago. I'd seen snatches of it, and what they use it for, check this out, is to finance campaign activity by the Tea Party and right-wing Republicans in Memphis, in Tennessee, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, and parts of Ohio. And that's all out of what happens here.
Now, isn't that true campaign collusion?
Yes, it is. And the feds have pointed it out, but nobody local will prosecute it. They won't touch it.
Wow, you must be talking about some really powerful heavy hitters above the law.
Well, yeah. All of the Republican types that depend on it. Do you know what they've got in their goddamn cookie jar right now? Non-interest bearing account. They've got almost $30 goddamn million in there.
Oh, my God.
And they use it as collateral And with collateral, you can leverage out $240 million easily. And they use that for these Tea Party motherfuckers, these right-wing Republicans, to run for office on that kind of finance.
But don't you see the cycle, though, Judge? Now, if I'm getting a monetary gain that keeps me in political power, and all I gotta do is keep these people immoral and having rampant sex and a bunch of babies, so we can lock up and seize these child support payments. That's the cycle. That's an internal system.
They don't have to keep them immoral, because you know what the driving engine is?
What?
It's not the right-wing Republicans. They're just giggling and collecting the money. You know what the driving engine is?
What?
All these goddamn bitches that are running around talking about men are evil and your woman doesn't need a man.
Wow. Yes.
Do you know how bad this shit is?
Yes.
Look, Hollywood has been driving it for 50 years. If you go to the site for the Oscars and the Emmys, you'll see these little strange-looking stop signs that are pink, yellow, and green. All right? And if you hit them, it's a link to LGBT, and they brag about it. They note that Hollywood is 85 to 90% LGBT.
Very
and
intolerant.
They have a program which is to break up the family. Do you know how successful these bastards have been?
How?
The Defense Department published a series of papers in 2011 based on the census report for the decade 2000 to 2010. They discovered that 9 years ago, that 42% of Americans 35 and under were born out of wedlock. For those 20 and under, it was 84%. And that isn't just black people. That's everybody in that pot.
Oh, my God.
You see where this shit's going?
Too fast, I see where it's unfortunately going.
Let me tell you what else is fucked up. You hear all this shit about men make more money than women and the women can't get a job. Do you know what the Defense Department revealed? And I looked at it. It is in fact what the Census Bureau came up with. Do you know that only 44% of the workforce in America is male?
What?
56% of the fucking workforce in the United States of America is female.
Damn.
Do you know what the percentage of masculine graduates from high school is composed of today?
No.
Only 28% of each year's high school graduates for the last 14 years, on average, are male.
So we're dropping out education, we're dropping out of the work. The only place this left for us is the military.
Well, they can't get in the military because most of them, that used to be the SOP 40 years ago, go into the military. You can't now because it's too high tech and they suffer from a lack of education level.
Oh, they're too dumb. They're too dumb.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
Wrong attitude. And you know what else they do?
What?
The typical gangbanging motherfucker in the black community is like a lesbian in a boy's body. They were raised like girls. They have the assessment of reality that is girlish. It's just like a lesbian went and saw the fairy godfag yesterday. He waved the magic wand, or it waved the magic wand, and she woke up with a dick today. And that is your gangbanger. These violent motherfuckers do not think like men. They think like women. Most people don't get it. You know what you used to see down in the hood?
Oh, yeah, the carnage.
Next door neighbor threw boiling grits and molasses on her neighbor because the neighbor looked at her man she no longer deals with a year and a half ago when he was leaving her apartment in the projects.
Oh.
So she's still mad even though she doesn't have the same guy anymore. He just knocked it up. She getting a bigger check and he gone on about some other kind of business. But she threw boiling grits and molasses on the girl.
Dang.
You see, that's the kind of outlook that these boys have. They aren't fighting for honor.
Nope.
They aren't standing up. And if you got them on the witness stand, why don't you just punch it out with the guy if you were insulted? Look, Your Honor, with due respect, I'm pretty. Look at me.
Oh,
That's how I get my living. I get all these women loves me because I'm fine. I can't be getting my face all cut up, scarred up, duking it out with somebody. Yo,
oh my God.
they think like girls.
Yes. Straight up bitch
And
thing.
see, they got raised by not women, but some bitches who are dysfunctional and can't work in society.
Right.
See, I had a family in my courtroom, and it's absolutely tragic. I had started off all in one several month period. I got this woman who was 57 years old. I had her 43-year-old daughter who was a second child, born when she was 13. I had a 34-year-old daughter of the 43-year-old who was born 1 week shy of this woman's 10th birthday. I also had this 43-year-old's 32-year-old son born when she was 11, and a 31-year-old daughter born when this woman was uh, 12. So, okay, I had the 34-year-old daughter of the 43-year-old daughter of the 57-year-old had a 23-year-old daughter in my courtroom as a criminal defendant. The 23-year-old's 11-year-old daughter was pregnant with her second child. So I get the 21-year-old had an 11-year-old pregnant with her second child. I get the 21-year-old back in 16 months. She's now 23, and her now 13-year-old daughter has 3 children.
That
All
is.
right, just visualize this. So I had all of them in there that I was paying close attention to for about 2 years. So I started off with them in 1994. 1996, the 23-year-old with the 11-year-old with 3 children had, guess what? 4 other children and was pregnant again.
These puppy
And
mills.
I told her if she got pregnant again without being married, I was putting her in jail. So I locked her up for 2 months. Okay?
Okay.
She had the child in jail because she was not getting prenatal care.
Oh.
Okay? Now, the 57-year-old was now 59 years old, going on 60. 1 week, I had her back, and I looked at the report, and she had 243 lineal descendants. I had her back 2 weeks later for more in person reporting to the court. I used to drive the clerk's office crazy because I said, I'm eyeballing them. I'm bringing them back in. None of your goddamn business. You keep the records of the court. I'm not interested in your input as to whether you think it's right or not. So I'm looking at this chick 2 weeks later. She didn't have 243 lineal descendants. She had 358. 358 lineal descendants. By the time I retired in 2000 to do this show full time, this woman had 3,400 lineal descendants. I had 120 of them in my courtroom. So this now, let's see, 61-year-old woman when I retired didn't just have children, didn't just have grandchildren. When I first got her, the child that I had in there, which was one of her 11 children, was 43. She didn't just have grandchildren, one of which I had in there was 34. She didn't just have great grandchildren, one of which was 21. She didn't just have great great grandchildren, one of which was this 21-year-old I had in there. She didn't have great 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 grandchildren, which included the 11-year-old pregnant with the second child. By now, we have a situation where we've got great, 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 great grandchildren, and this heifer is still alive, and
Mm,
she ain't even but just 61.
dang. You know, Judge, how come we can't do DNA on those younger girls' babies and track down these pedophiles and put their ass away?
Yeah, they report them. And I'm raising hell with this jackass bunch down at juvenile court. I said, wait a goddamn minute. We've got great, 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 great grandchildren.
Right.
One of whom was indirectly in my courtroom, only 11 years with the second child, and you got a name, and nobody is prosecuting for especially aggravated rape.
Yes.
What the hell is wrong here?
I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy guy, but do they belong to some sort of secret organization, some sort of little group that gets special
No,
privileges?
the district attorney general we have elected is good friends with what was the judge down there. Guess how far the judge of juvenile court had gone in school?
How far?
He dropped out of the 6th grade.
Oh, stop.
That's as far as he went. The state Supreme Court had ruled that because of his educational deficiencies, he could not hear cases. But he kept standing for election and getting reelected, and he couldn't hear a case. So they had all of these special referees and special judges who were lawyers exercising the authority of a judicial officer who had never been elected to that position.
Oh my God! So even though the people elected him, they are still getting judgment by this secretive side group of whoever.
Yes, and he had 6 referees that were hearing cases and one special judge. The special judge, who by state law was supposed to be elected by at least 3 lawyers having business before the court on a day when the judge was indisposed, he had a permanent position. He was also a state senator and kept passing laws that enabled this sickness. Guess what? The rest of these 5 son of a bitches were all fresh out of law school, and they were gay because the judge was gay.
So yeah, I'm not being ignorant or coy here, but we all do know the gays have a vested interest in sexualizing the youth.
Exactly. And then we had a scandalous thing. The report got squashed by the DA. I'm personally acquainted with the former captain in charge of sex crimes for the Memphis Police Department, and one of my previous campaign workers was the head of sex crimes for the sheriff's department. She had also been head of homicide for the sheriff's department. But both of them told me that they could not get a goddamn prosecution over these sick perverts who were volunteers for juvenile court and were checking 13, 14-year-old boys who got a little girlish looking, little curly hair types, and they'd be taking them out of state and having sex parties with them.
Oh my God, that's like a miniature Jeffrey Epstein operation.
Yeah. Well, guess what? The DA's office declined to prosecute one big Southern Baptist preacher who had been thrown out of another city but protected by the Southern Baptist organization. And he had 16 little 12-year to 10-year-old boys he was having sex with, getting oral sex from, and he videoed the goddamn thing. So you know what they did?
What?
They gave him 10 consecutive 1129 misdemeanor sentences.
What?
And let him have unsupervised probation for 10 years.
Get out. You're just begging for them boys to get reassaulted. Or new ones.
Yes. So the Southern Baptist transferred him out of office, and he's got unsupervised 10 years worth of goddamn probation for having sex with, especially aggravated rape. They reduced to sexual battery, and they got it on goddamn film. And I talked to these 2 women who were captains, and they said that they had an ironclad case. That was it. and they could not get the goddamn DA to go any further with it.
Now, could it be because now just being, I guess, devil's advocate on this one, isn't it illegal for anybody to view child pornography?
Excuse me,
Like,
the DA is a woman who is, guess what, a lesbian. And she, guess what, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford law reviews all did a special report on her. She has more individual findings of prosecutorial misconduct against her personally over the last 10 years than any DA's office, considering Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, has against it collectively.
oh my God.
Same 10-year period.
So she's like a homosexual extremist wielding her power.
Exactly. I ran against the bitch. Black Box Inc. said I got 72% of the vote. But guess what? There are only two people running. I was a Democratic nominee. She was a Republican nominee. And guess what? There were inside the program for the computer that scored the votes, there weren't just two candidates, there were five.
Stop
and
it.
50-some thousand votes went to three non-existent candidates.
So they rigged the voting machines to keep this
Yeah.
heifer in office.
Guess what? The feds gave Shelby County the money to replace every one of these machines in 2008, finding that they were corrupted. They got it from federal drug money.
Wow.
And you know, in 11 years, they have yet to replace them. And even though the majority of the county commission is black and they have term limits, every single time it has come up, which is at least twice a year, you've got at least three black county commissioners that vote against replacing these corrupted machines.
Well, from their point of view, Judge, I'm sure the machines aren't broken, so why fix them?
Oh, they're broken. The feds found it. And they said, guess what the machines use? They're deballed machines.
Oh.
California took theirs. So instead of using the deballed machines, you know what California did with every one of them?
What's
Dumped
that?
them in the Pacific Ocean. Hawaii had them. You know what they did? They torched them and destroyed them so no one else could use them. Ohio had them and they used them. There are only two counties in the United States that still use those machines. Shelby County, which is where Memphis is, and Haywood County, where Sheriff Buford Spusser was, who got gunned down by the bad guy in the movie that they didn't mention. That was the governor.
Oh, man.
See, that's the only two counties that are still using those machines. They're based on Windows 2000, which is completely obsolete.
Oh, yes.
There never was a firewall in the machines in Shelby County. The feds found that the damn things had been corrupted in 2001, and there hasn't been a legitimate election in this county since.
That is insanity. And this is known. This isn't like it's a big state secret. This is known.
No, it's not. You know, and you know all it takes to corrupt the machine?
What?
They're already corrupted, but you know what it takes to activate the corruption? You walk in to a voting precinct and you have a cell phone with a text message to a third party, and you stand within 5 feet of the slot reader in the machine and press send. You now have that machine totally corrupted. If you put in there with the formula they have who you want to win that machine, now within 5 to 10 minutes you've corrupted every machine in the precinct, and within 45 minutes to an hour you now own every machine in the entire Shelby County system.
Holy crap.
And this is the largest majority black city in the United States.
And do you think that is contributing to the lack of funds? Sort of like what we see with this Notre Dame thing, how all these people were able to raise up $600 million, but then you got all the black churches burnt down there in the South, and you can't even raise up $20 for a
Well,
chicken dinner.
I'll give you an example. 1988, before we got our first elected black mayor, Dr. Willie Harrington, who is running again for a sixth term to break this up. There was a right angle turn at this new housing development, upscale, on a place called Mud Island. The city sold the corner to a developer for $14,600. The corner. Why would you sell a corner?
Yeah.
He sold it back to the city in 60 days, a little over 60 days, for $6.8 million. And all of these bastards split the money.
Wow.
Now it's a roundabout, and they've changed it, but that's an example of the kind of corruption that exists in this city.
And people, are the people who are elected down there, are they your typical, there'll be Greeks, or there'll be Masons, or there'll be other little organizations in addition to being politicians?
They aren't Masonic. I know that. And actually, I am a Mason. And the Masonry around here is diametrically opposed to these corrupt bastards.
And there's no...
But the people don't pay attention. They get handed a sample ballot and they voted. Do you know this bastard I'm talking about? His name was Joe McCarty. And he got 90% of the black vote. But you know what the black folk were bamboozled into doing? Guess what his background was? He used to be chairman of the White Citizens Council.
No.
And before that, he was the Grand Dragon for the local Ku Klux Klan.
No way.
I used to call him a corrupt bastard all the time up in judges' meetings. Say, you goddamn corrupt bastard, and you are a sick son of a bitch. Your granddaughter was an assistant clerk in my courtroom. All of your other clerks were sick with the flu. And you sent a note down asking if I could send your granddaughter up after you fucked with everybody and reset all these lawyers' cases to 3 o'clock in the afternoon just being spiteful. I told you that I had a jury trial on, and I would send her up there approximately at 3 o'clock, which was when I anticipated taking the verdict on this 3-week-long trial. Well, guess what? Your own granddaughter got up there 11 minutes after 3 after she did what I needed done in my courtroom because I had people off sick with the flu, too. You bastards, you locked your own granddaughter up because she came in just after she got out of my courtroom where she's regularly assigned. I'm granting a habeas corpus, getting her out of jail, and you are a sick son of a bitch.
Damn. What did he say to that, Judge?
Well, I said, fuck you. You want to kick my ass? Let's do it. Up here in the Judicial Lounge. Always thought you were a perverted son of a bitch.
Wow. I can't believe that guy was allowed to achieve such heights of power with that type of background.
Well, he couldn't. I thwarted him. They had 1, 2, 3, 4 other black judges then. They don't have that many, and that was 20 years. They don't have that many black criminal court judges now that they had 20 years ago.
So they are taking their country back.
Yeah, and each one of these motherfuckers that they have now is an elitist, upper-class racist.
So,
they got one former prosecutor who is a black judge, and he is a creep. That motherfucker hates his ass so goddamn badly, it's pathetic. They got 2 black women, and they're scared to piss in their own goddamn private bathroom for Fred is somebody to get them. They got one good brother who takes care of business. He used to be a prosecutor, but he's been in private practice for 30 years, 28 years, 20 years before he got on the bench, and he tells them to go fuck off.
Oh, my God. Oh
He's
my
the
God.
only righteous brother we got up there.
And this is the legacy after 20 years of men and women, black folks being in power. We're down to just one righteous brother in 2019.
Yeah. In 1969, we had Ben Hooks was a criminal court judge. He got nominated by a guy named H.T. Lockett, who was on the governor's advisory staff. Lockett was a black man. Then we got Otis Higgs. He nominated him, and the governor sat there and appointed him. When Otis resigned to run for mayor, then they offered it for the third time. The H.T. This was like 1976. He said, okay, what the hell? And he was a damn good judge. Otis got reelected again later. And
Mm.
then there was a buffoon who had a good heart, but he was just so goddamn lame. He had been a former prosecutor, and it was just like he didn't have a clue, but he tried, and he was always trying to get the black judges to walk out of the judicial conference in protest. I'll give him that, but he was such a nerd. And he was in there, and that was Arthur Bennett. And then we had me, and we had Otis came back on as H.T. Lockett, me, Arthur Bennett, and then we had this sister that got appointed. And check this out: she was the lesbian lover of a sister that was Speaker of the State House, who was a
Oh.
lesbian. And the chick that got appointed, her, had never been in criminal court a day until she was sworn in.
No way. No experience.
But that was 25 years ago.
So the legacy. I'm trying to wrap my head around how come people didn't see this coming in the 90s and 80s? Like, hey, we're losing, our guys, our representation in the judicial field here, folks, in the prosecutional field here. We're losing it. And then in the early 2000s, it had to be clear and obvious that we were losing ground in our
Yeah,
field.
yeah, but they had corrupt voting machines then. They couldn't do anything about it. And then
Oh,
it gets me, the last couple of years I was on the bench, I would say, how many people in here have been arrested for a criminal offense? Please hold your hand up. White and black, they would have most of the orange, the prospective jurors. I'd have 100 some people in court sitting there. Okay?
right.
Let's say it's a murder trial and we're trying to select a jury. How many people, if they haven't personally been arrested, everybody keep your hand up who has been, have a relative, an aunt, a relative such as an aunt, an uncle, a son, a daughter, or a grandchild who's been arrested? Raise your hand. Every motherfucker in the courtroom got his hand up.
I'm ready to say yes, sir.
White and black.
Wow.
That's how bad it's gotten.
Now, in your early career, though, when you first became a judge, what do you think would have been the percentage of people raising their hand up after that second question?
Well, I know because I had them do that. It was a lot less, about 25, 30%.
See, do you see what's happening here? The rate, obviously, of it, at least incarceration, maybe not imprisonment, has this gone through the roof. So isn't there? So I guess what I'm asking you is there money being made just
Well,
in the
no.
arrest?
What's being made is this. All of these, remember the thing I'm talking about the family situation?
Oh yes, child support and all
We
the.
got a problem where in North and South Memphis, which are almost exclusively black areas, do you know 9 out of every 11 male blacks between 18 and 29 at any given time were serving time?
No, not
It
that.
was depopulated.
From incarceration.
Incarceration. But let me put this to you. It wasn't that they didn't belong in jail. These are some sick motherfuckers.
they really, but we can look at the social deal that got them, but that's more excusism. But we have to deal with just the facts. They were doing the crime So obviously they got
They
caught up.
had no fathers. They did not know what it was to be a man. You know, this gang thing, it's so essentially feminine.
Mm,
They act like unruly bitches. They do not act like men. You know what I used to do for the last couple of years I was on the bench? I had started this show. And do you know I used to have made men from the real mafia white boys come down there? And I was the only judge that would make every somebody I put on probation attend one of my personal counseling sessions.
mm. What would they
And
say?
I
What
would
did
have them. I'd lock the door to the courtroom, couldn't anybody in there. And I wouldn't have on a robe. I wouldn't have a tie. I'd just have on an open collar shirt. And we'd cuss and everything else. Hey, the judge is trying to tell you some shit.
Mm,
You know what I do, don't you know? Hey, what the hell is wrong with you? You shit where you eat.
yeah.
You fuck up your own neighborhood. We would kill you in Little Sicily or in Little Italy, anywhere in the country. We don't allow this bullshit. You
Mm,
be killing each other and you ain't even part of no organization. You be robbing your women folk. You be fucking up your children. What in the hell is wrong with you?
mm.
We get insulated because we provide for our neighborhoods. We don't allow no drugs to be sold where we live.
Mm, that's true.
We don't allow women to be. We kill your dumb ass. But you be fucking up your own folk. What is the matter with you? The judge is trying to tell you when he's trying to tell you to be men and women that you got an obligation to where you live. You don't fuck up where you live. I
Mm.
mean, maybe there's something between, the organizations, but y'all be fucking up your own folk. You rob your neighbors. You rape your own women. You pimp your women. You sit there and you burglarize your neighbors. We don't allow none of that shit.
Dang. Dang, that is so right.
The hell is wrong with you? Well, how come you here? Cause we supposed to judge. He be promoting manhood, which is a good thing. You sissy motherfuckers got too much bitch in you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look here, white boy. Motherfucker, I'm Italian, motherfucker. I'm from Sicily. My daddy and my mama come from there. I'm the. You know who I am, motherfucker? Nah, man, you just look like a white boy to me. I'm the fucking mafia, motherfucker. Do you know what my position is? I tell you, dumbass, because I'm trying to help out the judge.
Mm.
My boss is the capo. You know what that means?
Mm. The boss is the enforcer. The capo's the enforcer.
Well, in other words, I'm a assistant capo.
Oh
I'm the
shit.
big man.
Make your ass disappear. Abracadabra.
Yes, yes, we send shit to the judge because we want him to dispose of it wisely. Ordinarily, when we take care of this shit, there's blood left staining the sidewalk. It's bad for the children to see this shit. So we send them to see the judge on his show.
Wow.
What the fuck? That's how you think he got me here talking to you dumb motherfuckers.
Damn. And they obviously they didn't get it though, Judge. Or at
Oh,
least
they
enough.
did. They did. You know what? I had something going for me nobody else in the state had. The felony recidivism rate in every other court but three in the state, and those were three of the old black judges,
Mm.
was 80%. You know what it was in my courtroom?
What?
18.
Hold. Please, no. I know. I gotta break that down. How was you getting an 18% recidivism rate?
Versus 80.
Yes. How was you able to achieve that?
Because I was teaching them manhood.
Mm.
Instead of talking about ain't no daylight at the end of my tunnel, I'm gonna be dead for I'm 24 and I'm 23. No, I had them looking at it like there may not be any daylight at the end of the tunnel, but I've got the obligation as a man to make sure that I carry as many people as far down the tunnel as I can past the fire-breathing Gila monsters, the flames, and the traps, so they'll get to the end of the tunnel and see the daylight. I got to look at me in the mirror every damn day and assess whether I acted like a man, which means, did I do what I was supposed to do yesterday, or did I fuck up? Am I going to do what I was supposed to do as a man today, or am I going to fuck up? I got to do what's right. So now, man, 28, 29, 25 years after, 23 years after I had somebody in my courtroom, old gray-haired motherfucker come up to me, hey, man, I got 5 grandchildren, and Judge, I'm so proud of what you helped me to do and see how it was right. I got 17 boys I counsel, and I tell them just what you used to tell us.
Wow. You see that energy?
It's your duty and responsibility to make where you live a better place. Like you told us, once you get a cause, life seems okay. You got a task, a challenge, but it ain't just all hopeless.
Right. Because think about, even like, if you're sitting there thinking that you have nothing, I have nothing, I can't go nowhere, versus, hey, I got to build this house. If nothing else, you have to get a hammer, you got to get nails. You got to get supplies. And inside that supply is, you can wiggle out a sandwich here or a light bill there to keep you moving. But if you're sitting there just bitching and moaning, Judge, I'm never going to go nowhere. I might as well steal this Rolex. At least I'll get some money from that. Man, you're a lost cause, dude. And it's like the mobster guy said, you're a damaged
And here's what I told him. I said, it's not so much that criminality condemns you to be less than a man. It's when the criminality is cannibalistic that fucks you up.
Yes.
Because you're taking down where you live.
Yes. Having all this graffiti.
And if you are a man, you try to promote betterment where you live. That's why I bring the mafia in there.
Wow.
Say, we know the judge from Vermontes. That's a restaurant. It's down in a fucked up warehouse district. It's been open 105 years. But the little old ladies can wear real bling and their ankle-length fur coats, and ain't nobody gonna look at them strange. Because we make goddamn sure that they don't.
Right.
We got all the boys down there. And Judge, last time you came down there, how many police captains were sitting over at that table in the corner? I said 5. Where was they from? NYPD. And where did they eat? Right there at Vermontes. Yeah, what's on Tuesday and Thursday? That's when the boys down there. You want to tell them about that story about some of them folks from your studio you brought down there? I said, yeah. They were we were sitting at a table. I put them there at the next table. Luis, what we gonna do about these wayward Luke? Yeah, you imitate us real good, Judge. What we gonna do about these wayward He cut this man's face up for such a minor infraction. Somebody chimed in, yeah, boss, but he was a sharp instrument. He just has some character line. Remind me, put a note down to talk to these youth. We need to explain the facts of life. This ain't gonna happen no more. Oh, gee, man, are they serious with this? Yeah? Would you like me to introduce you? Oh, my God. Is it safe? No, but you might want to meet them. Hey, Dad, what you want? I wanted you to meet some of the people I work with. Oh, they look like some fucked up pussies, but you work with them? You spare their ass. You leave tonight in safety if we with the judge. Oh, shit, were they serious? Yeah. You did notice all the police, NYPD, over here in New Jersey, didn't you? Oh, shit. I mean, goddamn. Yeah, this is the real deal. You do? Where have you seen this before? Oh, shit, I know. They used it as a set for The Sopranos. Yeah, that's right.
It's funny when they see reality in front of them. When you know that this isn't cut, you know, this is real deal. It's funny that the energy, you know, it's like I bet you the tension for a second you could cut it with a knife when it really clicked on the crew member's head. They're sitting around people who put people in bags.
Yeah. There's a 70-year-old guy. He's like 6'4", big motherfucker with a nose broken 3 or 4 times.
Mm.
Man, guy, what do you do, man? You want to ask me what I did? I'm retired now. I'm 77 years old. Ask me what I did. Well, what did you do? There's this mythical organization we shan't mention. But let's put it this way. I sort of made sure that what they wanted, they got. Understood? Yeah, yeah. We like the judge. Now what the fuck you want now?
That is what I'm talking about. That is hilarious. We like the judge.
So they liked it. You know why? Because I was pushing manhood. They'd send cases down there where they wanted me to teach a lesson. And do you remember which ones we sent you the last year? Yeah, I do, and I name them. Yeah, I told you, boys. He's recognized that. Yeah.
Oh shit. That's the thing about the manhood thing. That's why I always say this. Every time that you, the way you present yourself on that TV show, the way like I said before, they could have thrown you in some crazy gear. If you would have went along with it, man, you would have been way past all the ratings. Because look, Judge is so open-minded. Oh, he loves our agenda. Ew, ew, ew. But the community would be. I'm just going to say it like this, Judge. There are human beings probably on this earth with loving parents because you taught this man to love that woman right and they stay together. You probably, in essence, has helped humans procreate proper human beings, not just little random kids. I'm talking about proper children that are loved by two parents. And that's because of what
Yeah.
you did.
You don't want to know the truth of the matter. For the last 3 years I had the show, I was in the same section with Oprah, Phil, and Judy. And we had a guy over us uh, who had a daddy that started TV syndication. He was a real man. He wasn't one of these punks. He was a former pro football player. And his daddy persuaded him, like he told me, to get with all these sissy ass fags up in here and make some serious money. So he left me his organization. Well, he brought Oprah and Phil over to CBS, and CBS gave him me and Judy. So he said, "Why are they trying to fuck you over?" I said, "Because I won't go along with that sissy shit." He said, I feel you. I'll take care of that shit."
Mm.
So he was helping me out, but he'd come to me and said, "I can't get them to put up any advertising dollars for you." He said, "But I'm going to see what happens here. Do you know the last 3 years, every day, every week of the year, I was beating Oprah in the ratings and I was beating Phil in the ratings. And I was stepping on Judy's heels. But every time I would catch up with her and start beating her in the ratings, they'd exercise a different option with Nielsen, who did the ratings, so she would stay just ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So for the longest time, I was the number 2 ranked syndicated show in America. But they gave me no advertising, and I would still do it because they couldn't stand the fact that I would not endorse their bullshit, and I was a black man. I had more crap, man, about we're over in internal, human resources.
Yeah.
There's a complaint filed against you. I saw it. What do you have to say? You got anything else better to do? I got some stuff I need to take care of. Have a nice day, Judge. Where is he going? Because you guys messed up and you have counseling you're going to have to go through. for 6 out of the next 10 days. Well, he hasn't done anything you did. He's the star of your show. You don't even get it. So I mean, they did that. But I was the #2 ranked syndicated show in America. The only person in television that was making more money than me was Judy.
Right. But she has that, she fits into the divine feminine, the sassy, moxie
Well,
woman, blah, blah, blah.
let's see. You know what she was? She was a Jewish mother figure. And the Jew boys who made up the majority of the people that were in charge of Hollywood had a thing about mother figures. They just fucked them over. But they got into it, like, oh my God, I'm getting fucked over, it feels so good.
See, that's one thing I never could comprehend. Is it because of, I guess the '60s paradigm shift as far as sexuality is concerned? You don't need to be married.
No, it's a Jewish thing. See, Jewish mothers stomp on their male children. They just squash them. They sick them on the rest of the world, but they are sick.
Wow.
They really get fucked over.
Could you elaborate? How do they distort the minds of their boys?
Jewish mothers fuck their sons over.
Wow, I didn't know.
They raise them to be subservient to women. See, like, for example, part of the problem with Jews is, do you know how you're determined to be a Jew? Not by what your father is. That doesn't count.
No.
It's what your mother was that determines if you are a real Jew.
Right. Right.
That's the same. You recognize it?
Yeah, from the story.
What was your status as a slave? What your mother's was.
Whoa. Whoa. Now that's heavy.
So these guys had a real problem with confronting the matriarchal image.
Because it's been beaten into their brains, Judge.
Yeah.
If that's all you know.
Yeah.
But it's been devastating. It worked for the Jewish community. I mean, look how economically successful, on all the little IQ tests they score so high in their community. Okay, whatever. But in our community, it's been kind of detrimental, this feminine running the family gag.
Yeah, but see, there's a problem with it. They're into making money, and they've got a rationalization that's several thousand years old. But until they got the state of Israel and a large number of people who founded the modern state of Israel, who were English, who had fought in the Royal Air Force, the Royal Navy, or the English Army, they were fucked up. And now they got all these Gestapo-acted motherfuckers that run Israel that have changed it to the ancient warrior thing, that they don't take shit from anybody.
And
that wasn't the case.
So what could we...
Well, see, in other words, they did a careful thing about brainwashing the Israeli community into understanding something that black folk don't, which is manhood.
Right.
See, all these gang-banging Crips, Bloods, gangster disciples, and all this shit, these motherfuckers are essentially bitches.
Well, very emotional.
They don't know what masculinity is.
No, I mean, like I said, we was having this conversation here, literally on the streets. They'll be like, we'll pop you, we'll put a bullet, you call me a B word, blah, blah, blah. We'll put a bullet in you, blah, blah, blah. So, never, I'll just, if you really have a problem with me, let's just throw some hands. Or better yet, let's just go our separate ways. You go back to your house, I'll go back to my house. But they can't do that. It's always, I'm going to kill you. Not fight you,
We'll see.
not debate
Yeah,
you.
ain't that awful?
That's not manly to me. If I had a true intellectual disagreement with you, Judge, I would try to debate you. I wouldn't have to, even if you blew me away in debate, I wouldn't come back with my, okay, now let's fight, Judge. You beat me up, now I'm going to come back with a gun and wait till you come around the corner. Don't even give you a chance to see me and then pull the trigger.
Well, you know what I used to do to fuck with them? I would sometimes run into somebody and I said, wait a minute, I know you. Didn't I tell you your ass got a 10 a.m., 10 p.m. curfew? Well, yeah, Judge. What time is it? It's 11:30, isn't it? Man, who this motherfucker talking to you? I didn't ask you, son of a bitch. Keep your mouth shut. Oh, man, it's Judge Brown, man. Don't fuck with him, man. Look, I'll fuck with who I want to. I said, oh, really? I said, you got a quarter, motherfucker? No, I got one. Watch. I put it on the back of my hand before it hit the ground. He's looking down the muzzle of a 45. I say, now that's why I'm talking to him in addition to being his judge. Now, I am not your judge, but I will be your fucking executioner real quick. And who do you think they gonna believe when I kill your ass and you assaulted the judge talking to one of the people he's got on probation? Oh, man, ain't got to be like that. Well, then don't fuck with me. And by the way, if you listen up, I'll give you a good clue on how to get your fucking act together so you ain't going through this bitch shit over here.
Yes.
Bitch shit, yeah, listen to me and I'll explain. So it is like 11:30 at night. The sun's coming up at 6-something a.m. and I still got this guy, my probationer, and 15 other motherfuckers standing around listening to Manhood.
That's what I'm talking about. People could be like, "Well, that's outside the judge's realm of authority. He should wait till blah blah blah." It's really agape love that you sit here and some could argue waste your time trying to educate these fools that don't want to know right from wrong. But you're actually, you were going out on a limb. You didn't have to do that.
Well, here's the way I took it. I said, look, don't think of me as being the judge. Think of me as being the village chieftain. One of the things the village chieftain does is pass judgment on misconduct in his village.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm the baddest motherfucker up in here. You may kill me, but the likelihood is I'm going to kill several of you because I know some shit that you don't know and can do some shit that you don't even see done right in the movies. Now, trust me on this shit. I will make your tomorrow a better day, but you got to listen to me. But if I kill your ass, they'll believe me and, they'll give me a medal for killing one of your dumb ass.
I hate to laugh, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
People don't like that.
But I will help you save yourself. So some of these people still come back to me now. Judge, you was over in Nickerson Gardens, man. That was some tough shit. Oh, man. You was up in there. Oh, man, I ran into the judge in projects 20-some years ago. I got a lot of gray hair in my head now, man, but that motherfucker scared me so bad. And then he started talking about how to be a real man.
See, that's what
I listen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. He said, I listen. All them other motherfuckers wouldn't listen. They dead now.
And that's what it is. And I just want to really bounce this to people. When you talk to regular mom and pa, folks in the hood, ghetto projects, whatever, they're not liking what's going on. They're not liking not being able to walk down to their local CVS and get their little pain meds or whatever medication they may need without getting hit up as they come home. They don't have to, they're too old to be trying to dutch and dodge bullets and jumping over, not crack needles, but heroin needles and all that garbage. Don't we owe it to ourselves to have decent communities? No, I mean seriously, whether we're poor or rich, we can still have decent communities. It doesn't have to be a cesspool.
Let me tell you what somebody told me 3 weeks ago I ran into. And they're always walking up to me and telling me, You remember me? No. Well, yeah, you gave me some time. Did I give you enough? No, no, no. See, but you showed me how to be a man. That's what's important. Instead of jacking folk, you showed me how to protect folk. That was a man thing. I'd never heard anybody tell me that before
Man, that's just.
or show me. Now I got 3 or 4 grandchildren, and I'm trying to put into 2 boys, how to be a man. And I taught my boys how to be men. Now all of them went to college, got good jobs. I got a good job. I ain't been in no trouble since you talked to me way back when.
You know, this is for fun because you had mentioned that you was a Buffalo Soldier, right?
Yeah.
I just had General Gravitz on, Major 2-star Major General Gravitz on, like 4 days ago on the show, and his book from East Garrison to the Ranch House. Such an amazing story of manhood. He grew up in in Little Rock, Arkansas, but then he moved out there to California and lived over there, by the ocean. But he still had to deal with racism. Now, what if he had one of these bitchified attitudes like many have nowadays? Oh, Judge, I went to basic training, and that white drill instructor called me a nigger, so I just had to get on out. And he never became a general. He never became an LAPD watch commander. He never wrote the book that hopefully would touch other young men and women to put aside the BS, focus on a go, lock that go in, pull the trigger, hit the bullseye. That is the message that we need to be having. We need, I really, really wish I would have known more about the Buffalo Soldier as I was coming up. I learned about it, back in the 90s.
Well, I claim some credit. I got a great uncle that was in the Buffalo Soldiers. He joined in 1881. He retired right after the turn of the 20th century. Now, guess what he did?
What did he do?
Times were hard economically, so he could pass for white. He joined on up with what became the Big Red One out of Alabama. And he wound up World War I ending as number 2 top sergeant in the Big Red One.
Wow.
They thought he was a white boy.
Wow. Look, he had to do what we call passing. But the point is, he did it.
But he was a bad motherfucker. My dad and my other uncles used to talk about, man, Uncle Booker is a badass motherfucker. He killed somebody in a goddamn minute. And this dude won all these awards in World War I when he was down in the trenches. They sent his ass over early, the end of 1917. So he was over there a long while.
Wow.
And he got out and retired in 1920. The second goddamn time is another somebody.
So what did Uncle later on do? After the whole military career?
Well, he was born back in the middle of the 19th century.
Oh, okay. So he was old.
1868, something like that.
Wow. So okay, wow.
Well, before that, he joined up when he was 18 with the 10th Cavalry in 1881. So he was born like 1863 or 4, but he was a free man.
Right. But did he was a free man, but did he had ties to either side of his family to slavery in any way, shape, or form? Or
well, the interesting thing about it is everybody in my family got free before the Civil War. They ran off, bought themselves, or got manumitted because they were illegal slaves. Like on my mother's side, my great-grandfather got brought over here as contraband after the slave trade ended in 1806. So they had to let him go. But he had to work to pay the person that bought him back.
So he had to pay restitution?
The interesting thing was he used to get persecuted by this white slave owner. and the white boy went bankrupt. So what he did is he bought the white boy's slave mistress and 5 children that the slave owner had with her at the auction, and told him to go fuck himself. He got his number one pussy now. But they wound up getting together, so he had 5 children with her too. So the first one he had was my grandfather, who was born in 1857.
Wow.
Well, before 1857, actually. Wait a minute. My grandfather was 101 when he died in 1952. So he was born in 1851, excuse me. So, that whole part of the family was free. His wife was free. But on the other hand, my great grandmother was a Choctaw Indian, and her husband refused to marry a slave, ex-slave, so he married the Choctaw woman, and he had bought himself. So everybody in my family on both sides did not need the Civil War and Mr. Master Lincoln to be emancipated.
They emancipated. They freed themselves through
Yeah.
situation and circumstance. What and
So I
powerful
had
story.
another great grandfather that was an Irish motherfucker. And to be candid, that great grandmother was a New Orleans fancy hoe that he got hooked up with. I'll tell you another thing that I learned. Interestingly enough, Irish were considered non-white until, as a reward for their participation in the Civil War, they were declared officially white in 1876 by a joint act of Congress.
Wow. When Irish were the niggers.
Yeah, literally.
This is what I'm saying. Is from a legal standpoint, from a legal point of view, is these notions of race just designations for legal discrimination then?
Well, yeah. See, that was a particular insult attended upon. Your ass didn't have enough going to free yourself. For example, in the Civil War, the Confederacy had Cherokee Indians fighting mixed in with the white folk and white units. Cherokee Indians were not considered inferiors, but slightly inferior. But they were the slave catchers, but they were free. The
Wow.
Irish, North and South, were considered free people, but they weren't considered white.
So your daughter, if you was an English descent wealthy man, there would be no way in hell you would let your little precious Southern belle marry an Irish boy.
No, and here's something about that too. England, 412 AD, the Roman legions left to go
Yes.
back to Rome because of barbarian incursions. But here's what's interesting. The last 3 legions in Rome were drawn from guess where?
Britannia?
Nope.
There had to have been the Germans.
Nope. They weren't.
Where?
They were drawn from the Ethiopian area,
Whoa.
the Sudanese area, which is where Anwar Sadat was from, and his mother was a black slave, by the way.
Whoa.
And see, the last 3 legions that left England were predominantly from black Africa.
They moved those men that far from
Yeah.
Ethiopia all the way through the empire. That's
Rome
amazing.
had 130 million people in it, and everybody but the slaves were citizens by then.
Wow. That's this is real
Yeah.
history. Do you
See,
maybe think the origin of the word knight came from melanated black warriors in England?
no. What happens is The Negro, Niger, and all of that, that's from Nigeria. That was an interesting area because during the time of Islam, most of the light cavalry came from northern Nigeria. They were the Hausa and another tribe, the Fulani, that unified in the House of Fulani, and they were Islamic. Guess where they went? To Spain. And until Ferdinand and Isabella united Spain under Christian rule, it was Muslim. And the cavalry for Spain were House of Fulani from Nigeria. So when the white folk unified Spain, or not really white folk, but the Christian folk unified Spain in 1492 under Ferdinand and Isabella, most of the Islamic type left, and they either went back to the Mediterranean area or they became mercenaries in the lowlands, which are Holland, Belgium and so forth. Okay,
Right.
you remember you heard of Torquemada and the Inquisition?
Yes.
That
Yes.
was in 1516, and what that was is to find out that the folk who had converted to Christianity or who were in the military as mercenaries for Spain were practicing Islam or heathen religions. They were talking about the many Muslims that had populated El Andalus. You ever heard of El Andalus?
No, never heard of that
There
city.
is a, yes, you have. You know what the name became?
What?
Spain.
The territory of Spain was called El Alja.
El Andalus.
Oh, wow. El
That was
Andalus.
Muslim. That was the Muslim name. The Islam ran Spain until 1492 when it was liberated by the house represented by Isabella and the house represented by Ferdinand. So what happened is they made the Jews and the Muslims who stayed in Spain convert to Christianity. That's why they have such interesting pork that they still serve in Spain, which was a test to see if anybody reverted back because neither Muslims nor Jews were allowed to eat pork. So they were testing to see if they ate pork. It was a traditional dish whenever you came to a function, household party, a gathering. They would serve a pork dish to see who ate it and who did not. If you didn't, that made you suspect of reverting to Christianity, or not reverting from Christianity to either being Jewish or Muslim.
Right.
So most of the Muslims stayed in the lowlands. That's Holland, Belgium, and the Netherlands. All right.
Right.
Well, you remember there was a hookup between Catholic Ireland, Holland, Netherlands, and Belgium because they still were predominantly Catholic.
Right.
Well, what was very interesting was when they came over and they started dealing with England that had become Protestant. There was a real weird thing that was going on there. So what they had happen was all of these former Muslims who were with the Spanish army as mercenaries up in the lowlands, they started interbreeding with the Irish and also with some of the Scotsmen. So you got an input from the African portion of the legions back in the 5th century. Now here is the 16th century. You've got another African input from the House of Fulani, who were the Moorish cavalry in Spain, and you know, Moorish architecture in Spain.
Yes.
But they came in through the lowlands back into Scotland and Ireland. So remember, Ireland was Catholic, English was Protestant.
Right.
So you got more African input into the English genome at that point. Then what happens is in 1746, guess what happened in England?
What?
They emancipated all of the African slaves they had, which were almost 1.25 million people. So you got all of that African gene dumped into the English population that had an input from the Moors who were in the Netherlands, Holland, etc., that had come in the 16th century. So in the 18th century, you had a massive dump of African genes that was hooked up with the Scottish and Irish genes that had African in them, that were hooked up with the African genetics from the Roman legions in the 5th century, beginning in 5th century. So right now, if you test an English commoner, he has a high percentage of black genes. Guess who a half African Queen of England was?
Oh my God. The city of Charlotte's named after her, right? Or am I thinking of the daughter?
King George the Third's wife was one half African.
Right.
They tried to conceal it, but she was half black.
Right. Didn't they send her to the
So
New World though?
we got a new princess of England who is black from America now.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so she's not the first princess. There was a queen who was half African.
No, what was her name? What was her name again?
George the Third's wife, I
Yep.
forget, but I can look it up.
No, that's fine. But the thing is, it's funny because we all know how the royal families traditionally are so inbred. You know, they have the where they get cut, they can't stop bleeding, and all these other genetic. It's almost like they have to get this injection of new blood from
Yeah, they
time to
do.
time.
In the English royal house, the men are all over 6 feet 2 or 3.
Wow. Well, that's because of their German
Since
ancestry, right?
Well, yeah, but they aren't as inbred as other royal houses in Europe are. And interestingly enough, since the middle of the 19th century, every single heir to the throne has been in the English military,
Yes.
either in the Navy or the Army. And the latest guy, who is supposed to be the next full king since his father is only a prince because he married into the royal house, is currently in the Royal Navy,
Mm.
or was until he retired after 20 years.
And he's in line to become the king.
Yeah, the next king was in the Royal Navy for 20 years. He was a helicopter pilot.
Wow. See, I'm
One of the kings of England, recently, the last king of England,
Edward.
before the current queen, who's 90 some years old, has been the longest reigning monarch in English history. The last king before her was a midshipman in a gun turret on a British battleship at the Battle of Jutland, which was the last full-on battleship duel in history before World War II, when the Americans fought the Japanese.
Right. And we took over basically England's shipping lanes. That's when
Yeah,
we came.
that was at Leyte Gulf,
Yes.
Leyte, in World War II, 1944, 45. But before that, the last big battle was the Battle of Jutland in 1916. So the future king was a midshipman, and he was in the Royal Navy. So now his grandson is heir to the throne, and he retired from the Navy after 25 years.
Wow. This you see this type of history because we all know, you know, or at least we should know the Queen of England is one of the richest individuals in the world.
Yes,
You know, her
she
asset
is.
yeah, she really is. Wars have been fought over the interests of her money in various regions of the world. So it's very important that we really understand, you know, that I guess the role of secession, because this money is not just the money, but it's the power. Even though we know they're not the political power per se of the UK, but they still wield a great deal of financial power
She's
around the
one of
world.
the richest people. The Queen is one of the richest people on the planet Earth.
Yes. I mean, I think she
And the
gets like
royal house is too. They own enormous estates. And see, interestingly enough, in America, you are a citizen of the country.
right.
In England, you are a subject of the royal house,
Mm,
of the Queen or the King.
mm.
And see, the other thing, too, like, for example, one of the longest running lawsuits in English American history has been going on since the early 1500s. The heir to this extensive land property that now includes all of Liverpool was kidnapped on a hunting expedition and tortured over a slow fire for 3 days until he signed over all of his interest to the current holder. That's been the longest running lawsuit. So every time there's a new chancellor in this division of English Chancery Court, he calls the case and then continues it under advisement. So all of Liverpool is in this estate, and you would think that the people in Liverpool will occupy a city, but they're all tenants of this family that has some pretensions of royalty, and they're all subject to the crown through the person that holds the property.
That's crazy, Judge.
See, like, in other words, the whole city of Liverpool is actually classified as tenants of the landlord, who is the subject of this lawsuit. Been running for 400 years, 500 years.
So you basically took these people from this citizens or subjects and turned them into serfs and peasants on the land.
Exactly. So where the Beatles are from, by the way, the Beatles are supposed to have a lot of black ancestry from the freed slaves in 1743. And they also, being from Liverpool, are tenants of this family that holds a 180-mile long tract of land as landlords under the English crown.
Oh my gosh. That and no one cares. No one understands the implications. I mean, how can you have any type of assurances? You know, I mean, obviously this court case is going on, so it will never complete. But still, yeah, I wouldn't. That's just so cringy.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yes.
But that's England. That's the difference.
You know what about
Which
all
is
this talk of
why
democracy?
our thing about the Second Amendment is so important. It is to keep the American public from being subjected to being reabsorbed by a crown.
Mm. Now, some would
See,
suggest
on
the second.
American law, you cannot be an American citizen and hold an English title.
You can,
Guess who was nominally an American citizen but renounced it?
who
Winston Churchill.
was an American citizen?
Yep. His mother was an American, born in America, full American citizen. She was heiress to a Chicago department store fortune.
Oh my
And she
gosh.
married Lord Churchill, who was Winston's father. He needed the money, and she was supposed to be beautiful and filthy rich.
Win-win.
So Prime Minister Winston Churchill was nominally an American citizen.
But he renounced his citizenship, so I
To
guess
be English Prime Minister.
right.
And no, he didn't really have to renounce it to be English Prime Minister. He renounced it to accept the English title of Sir Churchill.
Oh, I see. I see.
So technically, when Roosevelt was dealing with Churchill, he was dealing with an American citizen
That's what.
who happened to be Prime Minister of England.
That's crazy. That is just so wild. I mean, I know we're talking about legal, uh, um, I guess, statuses when we talk about citizenship, but the way it coalesces together, almost makes you think, was he a part of a little, intelligent agency? Like we found out that Hitler was basically a agent of the German army sent in to monitor these national groups, but this guy ends up running the national group.
Converting.
Yeah.
And guess what? His father's real first name was Schicklgruber.
That's a unique name.
And his father changed his name to Hitler. But guess why?
Why?
His illegitimate dad, he was illegitimate. His dad was Jewish.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That
So Hitler's father Hitler's grandfather, one of them was Jewish.
and that was a big no-no.
Got some side pussy with a Christian German, Christian Austrian.
Mm. And the Austrians are basically the elite of the kind of the German, realms.
No, they were a separate nation because they had the principalities of Greater Germany. They got unified by Otto von Bismarck in 1876.
Yes.
Prior to that, it was a bunch of municipalities. And Austria was part of the Hungaro-Austrian Empire.
Yes.
And they had an emperor, Emperor Franz Ferdinand.
Now he was shot in the first World War.
No, he didn't get shot. His heir got shot.
You're right.
That started World War I.
Correct. And it was just some not Yugoslavians. I think Serbians.
Some Slavs.
Yeah.
Serbians.
They started it, and then when we look at time.
By the way, a little interjection. You know where the word slave comes from?
Where?
Slav.
So Slavs were considered slaves of Europe at one time?
Yeah.
Wow. And is that why the differentiation between the black hair and the blonde hair kind of starts?
Well, not so much black hair, blonde hair, but Hitler considered Slavs to be what he called Untermenschen. In other words, under men. In other words, inferior men.
Subhuman. See, I've always said they got to, like, if I want to kill you off, Judge, first I have to dehumanize you. Oh, Judge Stroke Brown isn't a human, he's subhuman. And then once I get that locked into the consciousness, then I can send my decent folks in there to take you and your people out once I dehumanize you. And I feel that's what's happening to us in America.
See, here's another thing, too. We keep looking at them as a unified, homogenous group.
Right.
Europeans, they weren't. See, they killed each other off until they were in danger of cutting their gene pool down too far.
Right.
All of those internecine wars for several thousand years culminated in World War II when they just about did each other's ass in. And then the two vital populations, Russian and American, came in and just divided all of it up. So now they got a Euro Union.
Right, which is run by the Germans. It's like World War II.
But you see, up until then, they were killing each other off. The Slavs, the Mediterranean area, the Italians, the Spaniards, which were looked at as kind of the niggers of Europe, by the way, because of all of that Islamic influence and genetics. And by the way, you've heard the Germans talk about the elite supermen.
Yeah, Ubermen.
Yes, and who were they supposed to be?
They were supposed to be the Aryans. I'm assuming coming out of like
Aryans. Do you know what your archetypical Aryan looks like? We know one well.
Yeah, they're tall, blonde hair, blue eyes.
No, they're not. You know who the real Aryans are?
Who?
Guess who is one of their sterling representatives? Kamala Harris is an Aryan. They're in India.
Yes.
They are the Brahmin class. So our dear little Kamala Harris is not black. She's lying through her teeth. Her father says that too. She is an Aryan. That's what they really look like. The Germans turned them into a myth.
Wow.
But Kamala Harris is your classical Aryan superwoman because she is of the Brahmin caste in India. Brahmins are your archetypical Aryans.
Wow. Well, and that society's so whacked out. You know, the untouchables, the Brahmins, all these other
Yeah, the
classes.
Brahmins are at the top. Kamala Harris is at the top. Did you read that article that her father down in Jamaica wrote? He wrote it. He wasn't interviewed. He wrote it. He's an engineer.
Uh-uh. I did not see that.
He says, my grandmother was 1/8 Negro. Everybody else is either white or Hindu.
Wow.
So she is a Hindu.
It's just like
She's
Barack
one
Obama
thirty
2.0.
second. She's 1/32 Negroid, but see, that doesn't hold much negativity for the Hindu, because the Hindu range from very dark, even on a
Yes.
black scale, to kind of Mediterranean, kind of coffee with cream looking white.
Espresso white.
They have coarse black hair, and I show people pictures of Hindu Brahmin caste, and they say, "Oh, that's Kamala Harris." No, it's not. She is a famous Indian television personality. This is an Indian doctor. She's a Brahmin caste. This is an Indian businesswoman, Brahmin caste. They look like Kamala Harris. They sure do. They look like they're Kamala Harris. That's what I'm trying to tell you. She ain't no black person.
Mm.
She is a Brahmin. And guess what else the Brahmins were? I don't know. That's the Nazi Aryan that they myth made into a myth of being blonde hair, blue eyed. They're not blonde haired, blue eyed. They're kind of dark white folk with black coarse hair.
Wow.
Like, if you want to see what an Aryan looks like, it's not blonde haired, blue eyed. Kamala Harris is a female edition.
That's insanity. Just
So
insanity.
now you got a bitch trying to claim to be black who is your classic Aryan superwoman
Wow.
running for U.S. president as a Democrat.
That's, oh my gosh. You know, speaking of the up and coming election 2020, do you see any Democratic hopeful candidate to be a real contender against Trump?
Even Trump says that guess who could win and
Bernie?
beat him. He said if he had run against him in 2016, he would have won. Bernie Sanders.
Wow.
See, Trump is I know what Trump's game is. He's running the same kind of game that everybody else in the world runs, but is rare here in the United States. See, guess who funded or raised the funding for Jesse Jackson's 2 runs for president?
The Rainbow Coalition, I thought.
No, Donald Trump.
He funded Jesse Jackson?
Yes, both of his runs. Guess who funded the Clintons? Donald Trump. Guess who helped fund when he was a youngster, helped fund Jimmy Carter,
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Trump is a lifetime Democrat, but he joked, and I remember the coverage. 1996 and 1998, he said, if I ever run for president, I'm a lifetime Democrat, but I'll probably run as a Republican.
And he did. And he won.
He did. Guess who used to date a beautiful black woman who was a professional model before he married his current wife?
Donald Trump?
Yes, she's fucking drop dead gorgeous.
Oh my God. So, wow. Wow.
He used to joke how stupid Republicans are. And guess what? Let him run successfully. The Republicans did not, and still do not have a super delegate thing that the Democratic Party established not long ago to do what? Facilitate Hillary Clinton becoming the first woman presidential candidate.
Right. Right. That is, and that should be illegal. Because that, in a way, that no
if it weren't for the super delegates, Bernie Sanders would have been the Democratic presidential candidate, and Trump acknowledges if he had been, he would have lost.
Right. And we wouldn't have had a government shutdown. We wouldn't have confusion over this border wall issue.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's talk about government shutdown. How many have we had since 1980?
I thought like 5?
16.
Wow.
This isn't the first. They keep having them. Because there's no longer any bipartisan politics.
Right.
It's all switched over into an emotional them, those, and us.
Feminine. Emotional rule.
Yeah. And see, there are probably more gay folk in the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party has become the policy party of record.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what do you know? This new Equalities Act, this Equality Act thing that basically, we're walking down, me and you walking down, say Los Angeles, we see a white boy, I call him a faggot, and then I go to jail for hate crime.
Yeah, but if you call him a honky, you're okay.
Right.
If he calls you a nigger, he's okay.
Right.
If he calls you a fag, he goes, jacks up, 30 days in jail, 28 suspended, $500 fine. That's California.
Judge, how do we get? What about freedom of speech?
The hell with it. Don't you get it? All of this shit that we've got is emotional, feminine driven, and they don't give a fuck about the Constitution. They've got bitches running around now saying it's all right to ruin an innocent man if it helps out their cause.
Yes, that's I'm a father of a son, and I find that anyone who think about your father, think about your brother, your cousin, maybe your boyfriend if you're a chick. Think about how this affects the men that you love in your life. Not everybody's a scumbag.
They don't care. These bitches don't care because they don't have a man or men in their life. They don't have children.
That is true.
They are lesbians, or like Bill Cosby's accuser, they started off bisexual and now they're just about all a lesbian. And every one of them has been represented by that dyke Gloria Allred and her daughter, who's a dyke.
Right.
See, you know what I'm doing? Trying to restore the yin-yang balance. That's my business.
Yes.
That's what I've been doing. Fuck all this crazy shit. It's not good for the Republic. It's not good for the world. It's dangerous.
Yes.
It puts the country, the most powerful on the planet in terms of lethal capacity, on an emotional basis.
Damn. This is, I hate to say it, Judge, but literally this is how empires, kingdoms, and nations fall. Every time.
That's exactly it. And you know how this started? They took over Hollywood in 1967 and 68. And they've been using it as a propaganda engine to advance their cause for 50 some years. You had 1967, you had a nexus. You had the gay thing, you had the feminist thing, you had the anti war thing that said men need to be raised as girls so they stop being warlike. And you had the beta boy thing, those white boys that got passed over by masculinity because they couldn't cut it.
Right.
So all of them joined together in common cause, and we've got this shit we've got now. It's anti-masculine. What's masculinity? Principle, honor, duty, responsibility,
Life.
courage, and bravery. That's masculinity. Okay?
Right.
You've got toxic masculinity, which is something I first heard 50 years ago on UCLA's campus. The feminists were advertising that all masculinity was toxic, but they were planning a long-term campaign from the 60s into the next century, which is now, when they would brand all masculinity one little segment at a time as toxic to get the public to think negatively. They were taking over Hollywood in the means of formulating opinion and outlook, and that's what they've been doing. So my thing is to restore the yin yang balance,
Right.
man, woman. You need both, not just one. You
Yes.
see what they have done. Remember, how many times have you seen, heard of? None. I can answer it up front. Take your son to work week, because there is none.
No.
There's a take your daughter to work week, which is about 50 years old. That was a campaign and a strategy. Take your daughter to work,
Uh,
not take your son. So now only 44% of the workforce is masculine or male.
that is crazy. And you know what? These stupid feminists don't realize, those who like sports, they don't realize this toxic garbage is going to destroy female sports across the board. You know, reason why? Because you're going to have transgender men competing as women, dominating them
But
sports.
what is one of the attributes of masculinity? Logic, rationality, and reason.
Mm,
What's lacking in this feminist driven movement? Logic, rationality, and reason. And
yes.
what have they done? They have fucked themselves up by, for purposes of driving social conditions, they have embraced this transgender shit.
Yes.
And what is happening? These transgender motherfuckers who are supposed to be, in the politically correct scheme of things, considered as women, are now driving the engine that's fucking over these young girls who are getting fractured skulls and
Yes.
jaws in sports that should be reserved for real women, not some little freak boy who wants to compete as a woman.
Mm. Just think how many scholarships those little boys are going to get, because they're look. There's no shame. I like to say it like this: a woman's strength truly is her weakness. Meaning that by her being weak, a strong man like myself will identify that. As long as you love her and you marry her, or whatnot, I'm going to use my strength to compensate her weakness, her physical weakness. I'm going to
Well,
use my strength to
let's get more
compensate that.
basic. Let's get more basic. A woman is pussy.
Well,
Men like pussy.
well, yeah,
We breed with pussy. But
yes.
they've got this shit confused, so motherfuckers with dicks are supposed to be considered like they're women.
Don't work. That don't work. That don't.
Doesn't work. And by the way, I engaged in an experiment. I used to keep the cages. They had rat warrens back in the 60s in the UCLA biology department. You know what they were doing?
What?
Investigating homosexuality as a population control device in rats,
Wow.
which were a lot like humans, and humans.
Wow. And when we talk about population control, let's be honest what we're saying. This is an extension of eugenics. There's only certain populations that are targeted for control. Hello, Judge, you there? Uh-oh. That was,
Looks like we got a connection went bad.
yeah, that was totally weird. It just dropped right off. I had, oh my God, I just forgot what I just said. Well, I was basically going to segue into, as far as you mentioned breeding, for them to suggest that if you don't sleep with a transgender woman or whatever creature it's going by, that you are not a real heterosexual sexual man. If you don't elect, I mean,
That's
this
bullshit.
exactly.
That is falsity. You know what they have adopted, and you want to see how they do it?
What's that?
Google Joseph Goebbels, Goebbels, the Nazi minister of propaganda. They are going down his to-do list on how to do it. Tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get it accepted as the truth.
Oh yeah. And God, I just pulled up a picture of Joseph Goebbels. He is so weaselly looking. He's so.
He was. He had a club foot, and he was a weasel.
Oh my gosh. But he had the gift of gab. He had the gift
He
to
did.
take
He was
ideals.
dedicated and hardworking.
Wow. And look what he achieved. Look at all the pain and sorrow and suffering this man has achieved.
He was getting rid of the Jews and the perverts as he saw it, but he was a pervert himself. Look at Heinrich Himmler, head of the Gestapo.
Yep, got him right there with the glasses. And sometimes he almost looks like he's Asian with how slanty his eyes are through the glasses. But I know he
Yeah,
wasn't. But
a
yeah.
lot of that Mongol that swept through Germany with Genghis Khan and the boys.
Mm. Well, we know how that turned out. He has DNA in guys from Tokyo to New York.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about the whole Nazi regime is when you look at it, Nazis for all, the country of Germany, for all intents and purposes, was a landlocked country. What type of military mind, even though they had a little bit of edge on technology, would have ever considered that they would have actually have won a war against basically, essentially, the world?
Well, they almost did. Let me tell you what happened. If Hitler had left things as they were and consolidated his power in Europe over a few days, he would have been strong enough to have been a great oppositional factor to Russia. He could have cut off the spread of communism. He
Mm.
could have neutralized Russia economically. And Hitler jumped into World War II prematurely because he had not really built up his military. He did not have his mobilization plan in full force and effect. Even the Navy was 10 years off of their predicted plan on being able to make a substantial contribution to their war effort outside of the submarine force.
Right. Submarine force
If
wasn't
he
right.
had not been such a megalomaniac to underplay what the Russians did, he would have been able to consolidate his power. His arrogance even had him kick off his attack on Russia on the exact same date that Napoleon invaded,
Mm.
just to
Mm.
show he could. It was a bad day because he did not get full advantage of the summer period to campaign in.
Damn. And all
If
those
he had
men died.
waited 3 or 4 years to consolidate his power, to set up, he didn't even have war production going. That was 2.5 years later. If he had gotten wartime production, uh, gotten his manufacturing base in place, as he ultimately did, uh, he would have won.
And we would be speaking German.
Well, he couldn't get across here. that Atlantic Ocean is a bitch.
Well, can he have kind of island hop from Iceland to Greenland and then to?
No, that wouldn't have worked. The United States Navy was what it was, and it was equal to the Royal Navy. And the Royal Navy is what kept him from really doing what he wanted to do. They kept him from invading England.
True. They did it. Lock up the
Now, if he
strait.
had waited 10 years, he would have been able to have crushed the Royal Navy. But he still would not have been able to deal with the United States. The United States had a population of 130 some million people. Germany had between 45 and 60 million, depending upon who you listen to.
Uh, and then
He
we
wouldn't have been able to have done it.
no. And then when you also look at like all the Jews, how much manpower did it take from the fighting effort to make sure they guarding the Jews and killing the Jews and other.
Well, that was bad. But he still could have gotten away with that. But see, he did not consolidate Europe. He had them in his thrall, but he didn't consolidate his power with them. He didn't mix them into a unified whole. He could have, but he was obsessed with a fanatic's devotion to a cause. You know what it was?
What?
Just like J. Edgar Hoover, just like Clarence Thomas. What was Clarence Thomas attacking? What did J. Edgar Hoover attack? Now it's come out in the open. J. Edgar Hoover was black. His parents looked black. They tried to escape from Louisiana because the Klan was getting on their ass. They did. What is Clarence Thomas's problem? He hates being black. What was Hitler's problem? He hated Jews, but he was a Jew.
Right.
Okay. By the way, he was thwarted in love. He was also a homosexual, and the docket books in Vienna, where he was from, showed many arrests for homosexual prostitution. That's Hitler. And he was in love with a Jewish girl who was way out of his league class-wise.
So he's unlucky in love. He's basically been...
No, but he was Jewish. He was after a rich Jew girl, and it was thwarted, and he was a homosexual prostitute.
Wow.
He had multiple arrests for he used his daddy's name of Schickelgruber. He had many arrests on the Vienna docket for homosexual prostitution.
That's just messed up. I mean, because you know that the guy, the organization that became the Brown Shirts, Rome, I think his first name was one of Hitler's mentor, and on the night of the
he was gay as shit.
Yeah, and Hitler killed him.
Yep.
On the
he didn't want to. He couldn't get around it. He screwed up his nerve and just took it in his hands and did it himself.
That is just... So, I mean, it's like, do you think in a way he was trying to silence old boy because old boy ran up in him?
Yeah, I think he did. The Gestapo had homosexual initiation rights.
Oh, God, no. No, I guess that's one secret. That's one way to know if a guy can keep a secret. Run up in him and see if he tells anybody. Oh, my gosh. This is just too much. It's too much because it's like, just because...
And by the way, there's not much difference between the way gay folk try to run shit over here and what Adolf was doing.
Oh, yes. There's not. Most people don't realize this, but Germany was anti-smoking. I mean, I know that smoking cigarettes are bad for you, blah, 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 but, it's personal choice and freedom. But for them to, and this is just on a small level, take those type of repressive individual behaviors and say, no, you can't smoke a cigarette, but it's okay for this dude over here to smoke a Poe. This is what the problem that I have. On one hand, oh, this is my body and I can kill these babies if I want. But then on the other hand, a guy or a girl can't smoke a joint. in many places of the country. It's like these schizophrenic laws. On one hand, you
What?
can't. What's that?
It's like this. They tried to outlaw alcohol. It didn't work. But
Right.
what they do is they still make overuse of it, to wit public intoxication, criminal.
Right. Right.
And that I can understand, because that's got to do with the maintenance of public peace, dignity, and order. Drunk people are disorderly
Yes, they are. There's no two
when
ways
they're
about
in
that.
public. Now, maintaining public order is one thing. By the way, when you get an indictment, whether it's by the United States or just about every state, there's some interesting language in it. It says, on or about such and such date, someone allegedly did the following, and this is the crucial language, quote, against the public peace, dignity, and order of the state of Texas, of the state of Tennessee, of the state of California, or of the United States of America. Against the public peace, dignity, and order.
Mm.
See, the United States is interesting as compared to other places. It's only a crime if it was sufficiently egregious as to be against the public peace, dignity, and order. It disturbed the public peace, it was against public dignity, and it disrupted the public order. In other words, in America, it is only criminal if the act disrupted public peace, dignity, and order. In England, it is a crime whether or not it disrupted the public peace, dignity, and order. In America, it is only criminal if it disrupted that.
So,
In other words, if it did not come to the attention of the public, you're free to do it. That's why you have to have probable cause to make an arrest.
whoa, I see now. So then that leads credence to everybody's dirty of a crime. It's just a matter of.
Yeah, every year they have everybody bets at the parties on the outcome of the Super Bowl. And every state, including Nevada, that's a criminal act because it's gambling.
Right. But we do
But
it.
because it is not so egregious that it gets brought to the public attention and thereby breaches the public peace, dignity, and order, it goes scot free because there's no probable cause.
This brings me to a conversation I was having with a listener, and he suggested that all the laws in these United States are based on Christian principles. Like Christianity is the reason why we have laws in this country.
No, they're not. That's an error. They're not.
Can you explain?
In other words, the people that founded the country, or at least its political system, and wrote the Constitution, were extremely reticent about applying religious principles, because within the lifetime of a number of their fathers and in the early lives of some of them, they had had the 100-Year religious wars in Europe, the 100 Years' War.
Mm.
So they are very carefully, and that's why, interestingly enough, the first treaty France had with the United States contained the language: the United States being a Christian sovereign country, therefore there is a natural alliance with the Christian country of France. That was specifically rejected, and the language to the rejection of that portion of the first treaty with France, which at that time was with a monarchy, is the United States are not, and they were looked at as a plural, not a singular entity. The United States are not a Christian country.
Mm. Mm.
That is the language in the very first treaty that the United States ratified, with the exception of that language.
That's incredible because so many people judge put if they're religious or not, they put God's divinity and judicial laws like in the same boat. Like the reason why you have laws because the authority to even write up a law comes from God.
That's not where it comes from in the United States. The very first case the United States Supreme Court had was what is meant by the Sixth Amendment, where it says all law in the United States is all law for matters tried in the United States shall be upon the common law, and when heard upon appeal, the common law shall be applied. What is the common law?
Yes.
Here was the ruling in case number 1, volume number 1 by the U.S. Supreme Court. The common law is, that body of judge-made law based on tradition, precedent, and the evolving conditions of society.
Oh. So that way we don't get locked into that trap of our, obsolescence.
There's more to it. All law in the United States is common law until superseded by legislative fiat, act, law, or regulation or ordinance.
Wow.
So, in other words, you hear the right wing say the anathema of judge-made law. Well, they're bullshit. They're ignorant because by that very first decision, all the law in the United States is judge-made until it's superseded by statutory legislative law.
Dang. Dang.
Judges make all the law until they are superseded by legislative act.
So that's how we can get the term activist judges?
Yeah, but activist judges are a misnomer. That is bullshit because the thing is, activist judges making law. All law in the United States is supposed to be judge made until it's superseded by legislative act.
Wow.
That's the first case heard by the U.S. Supreme Court.
And that's the basis or the template for all the subsequent.
Yeah, but
verdicts.
you hear ignoramuses who've never read the Constitution. It's only 15 short pages.
Oh, they talk some smack, Judge. They do talk
I
some
mean, in a
smack.
pamphlet. And they're ignorant.
And,
All law in the United States is common law until superseded by statutory law. All common law is judge-made law.
well, can I
That's
ask you a
case
question?
1, heard by the U.S. Supreme Court, 1793.
Now,
92.
92. Now, we already said that ignorance of the law is no defense, right? But why is
It's
that,
no
Judge?
excuse.
It's
It's not a defense. It's no excuse.
Oh, well, that's a difference, though. Can't it be
You see, in other words, all law is the common law until superseded by statutory law. Based on the common law, it's common sense. Therefore, the application of common sense, which all people of common intelligence are presumed to have, would reveal what is right and wrong without referring to the written law or to case law. For example, until 1998, the criminal law in Tennessee was common law, and it was not written down in any code books. It was in the case law. In 1988, it was reduced to codes that were written in a criminal code.
Wow.
Some things were reduced to criminal law, but the general law was common law.
What? Well, then how do we get justifications for diplomatic immunity? Meaning diplomats can come over here and kill people, sell dope, pimp whores?
No, that's the common law, and that's a matter of international law, the law of civilized nations.
Okay, but
oh, by the way, guess what? Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution says that it is the duty of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States, to wit, the President and the armed forces of the United States, to enforce the law of nations.
Whoa. Whoa. Well, I mean, now we're getting into the United
Guess
Nations.
what? Guess what? They talk about the International War on Terrorism. There is
Yes.
no such in the Constitution. It is an anathema to the Constitution. The United States shall enforce the United States, the President, and its armed forces, the Navy and the Army, shall enforce the law of nations.
Wow. 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 That's.
Guess what? When you talk about terrorism, there are only two categories of law:
And what are these?
national law based on the common law and international law. And under that, where all this stuff against terrorism, there's no such thing as fighting terrorism. That's not constitutionally permissible. But you know what is permissible? Permissible?
What?
Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution says it is the duty of the President of the United States and the naval forces of the United States to suppress and eradicate piracy wherever
Yes.
found in the world.
Even in Tripoli.
All the Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, you sure as hell got it. And guess what about fighting terrorism? There is no such thing as terrorism, but hijacking airplanes
It's
has
piracy.
been declared by treaties which, under the Constitution, become part of the supreme law of the land, along with the Constitution and its amendments thereto. And what is that? Hijacking airplanes by treaty have become piracy.
Yes.
So when Al Qaeda hijacked 4 airplanes on 9/11, that was an act of piracy, and piracy shall be pursued anywhere we're found in the world, just like to the shores of Tripoli and the Marine Corps him
Mm-hmm.
fighting the Barbary pirates. Then what happens is you may pursue bin Laden and those who committed acts of piracy on 9/11 anywhere in the world where they may be found. And who raided them?
Was the SEAL team when got?
No. Who raided and killed bin Laden?
I thought it was SEAL Team 6 or 4.
Yeah, but what is that?
Oh, it's a special force, Navy. Navy special.
Navy.
Yes.
It is the responsibility under the Constitution for the United States Navy
Wow.
to pursue, suppress, and eradicate piracy under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution wherever found in the world.
That is so true. Now, is there any constitutional legitimacy for folks who claim to be sovereign citizens?
Nope.
Oh, well, there it
And
is.
there is no constitutional legitimacy for fighting terrorism. There is constitutional legitimacy for suppressing piracy
Yes.
wherever found in the world. There's constitutional legitimacy for declaring war, but you can only declare war on a sovereign entity. Otherwise, it's got to be piracy that's suppressed.
So then why don't we
Ignorant
use the
as
language?
George Bush, who had never read the Constitution, is like all but about 23% of the judges and lawyers in America. They've never read the Constitution.
I thought that was a part of the bar and all that.
No, it's not. You study aspects of the Constitution, but like the Tennessee bar, when I took it, did not test a general constitutional law. It only discussed and tested on the constitutional aspects of commercial law.
Oh my gosh. Protecting the corporations at all costs. Protect the
Yeah.
corporations.
In Tennessee, you could pass the bar and not pass the section on criminal law. That was optional.
Oh my gosh. I mean, doesn't that do a greater disservice to our nations to have?
Yes, it does. So many lawyers and judges have no clue as to what the criminal law is about and what the constitutional protections are. What
Yes.
is criminal law, by the way, is not really criminal law. It's constitutional protections of the political process.
Wow. Wow. This.
See, that's what's important about the Second Amendment, and that has been totally missed by many. The Second Amendment makes it unnecessary for the government to do anything but to protect the political process because the citizens have a right to protect themselves. The
Yeah.
citizens have a right. Guess what? You've heard of checks and balances between the federal and the local government, between the three aspects of government, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative.
Uh-huh.
There is a fourth.
It's called
And
lock
guess
and
what the
loaded.
Second Amendment allows? For the fourth aspect, that is the citizenry, equally armed with the military, to act as a check and balance to untrammeled government, just like it is split up into the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative. There is a fourth, that is the people. And all of them are equally powerful, and the way that the people act as a check and balance is because the Second Amendment gives them the right and the duty to be armed.
Right. As long as you legally can possess a weapon.
Well, it's not only can be, it at one time was a duty and obligation,
It was mandated, or it was like a law that.
mandatory.
Wow.
A well regulated militia being necessary for the common defense. The definition for militia that's still on the books, and it's also common law, is all able bodied males from 15 to 60 who are
Wow.
liable to call to protect the Republic.
We don't have that nowadays, though, Judge.
Yes, you do.
I mean,
Militias are still legitimate.
yeah, we have
It's
militias.
also transposed into the National Guard, the military reserve, and for the body politic. That is the militia in general. It serves as the ultimate check and balance to untrammeled government power.
It's like they have foresight about tyrannical leaders, which they actually probably backside. They know the leaders they left back in Europe because they did some very tyrannical stuff back then during the day. So
Yeah,
how did this get distorted into nowadays? When you say militia, people automatically think of a white nationalist group. They don't.
yeah. Well, it got distorted through ignorance and opportunism to distort it, and also playing by ignorance. Like I
Yes.
said, only 23%, 20% of the lawyers and judges in America have ever read the whole Constitution. It's interesting. They have to study constitutional law, but they don't have to read the Constitution. And they only study aspects of the Constitution as it applies to a particular field, how it applies to commercialism, i.e., making money, and trade and commerce, but they don't study the whole thing. Citizens' criminal rights. But see,
Yes.
criminal rights is a misnomer because actually it's citizen rights.
Yes.
They are political rights, and the transgression that it was most feared at the time the Constitution was drafted and approved, as well as the Bill of Rights 2 years later. So the Constitution was passed in 1789. The Bill of Rights were passed 2 years later in 1791. And the most important right that was feared was government action that acted to oppress the people.
Mm-hmm.
So government rights, the rights to resist inappropriate government, became manifest when the government got involved. And where did they tend to get involved?
Where? Like in the money, sort of like what was that? The whiskey
No,
rebellion.
government power and abuse came to be involved when they instituted criminal prosecutions.
Ooh.
That's why you have the right of habeas corpus. Do you know where the right of habeas corpus was most frequently exercised in the early Union?
Where?
When there was political oppression. Tammany Hall, for example, in New York, used to routinely arrest political opponents on trumped up charges 2, 3, 4 days before the election. And that's why you have the right of habeas corpus, so any judge could independently evaluate whether or not a person was being kept in custody without a constitutional basis.
Wow. That is
See,
so
all of these
sneaky.
criminal rights started out as political rights and protections. It's just in the United States, they didn't generally use the political and military and police authority of the country for political oppression. They came most frequently to mind when it became a matter of criminal prosecution.
Mm,
So
man.
you protect criminal defendants so that the same power that the government applies to suppressing criminal activity is not also used to suppress political activity.
Right. So,
See, that's what most people don't realize. Political criminal rights are a side effect of keeping the state and the government from using the same powers that it uses to suppress criminal activity to suppress political activity and create a tyranny.
maybe you can help me understand this. Back in the day, up in St. Louis, like when the president would come through, it was known that the cops would go through the city, get up all the homeless folks, and round up all the like all the felony people with felonies, and they would round these folks up while the president's in town. How could they do that legally?
That was technically wrong, but it was an accepted temporary deviation for what purpose?
Protect the president, I'm assuming.
No, to maintain
Order.
and promote public peace, dignity, and order. What did I
Yes.
tell you? All indictments are concerned with? Did so and so on or about such and such occasion do this against the public peace, dignity, and order of either the state or the United States?
Wow. So they could be deprived of their civil liberties. That's such a weird area. That is
It's an
such a weird.
exigency, but they don't do that so much anymore.
Right. I know this was back in the day. I was talking to some of my older uncles, and they were explaining. I was just fascinated by the story. I was like, they certainly couldn't round up people just because this.
Yeah, they did all the time. And they used to have a crime called public vagrancy. That was being about without any visible means of support.
So you're saying being poor was a crime?
Yeah, not for being without means of support. You could be a broke motherfucker, but you had to work. If you were about the public without employment, that was viewed as vagrancy.
Oh,
But that's been modified in the public mind because at one point, 35, 40 years ago, it was said to be a good thing to have a certain unemployment point
uh, uh,
in the country. So, how are you going to be non vagrant if it's good for public policy to impose a certain degree of unemployment?
wow. That is that is such a contradictory of ideology there.
Yeah. But you see, the Constitution is all about rational, logical, and reasonable consistency. And there are things that are the product of human behavior that are irrational and illogical. See, there is this dichotomy. There is the human urge as humanity progresses as a whole to impose order and rationality to a
Right.
person's existence and to society. There is the pragmatic consideration that as an organism, the individual human is irrational, illogical,
Mm,
and prone to disorderly behavior.
mhm. Yes.
So we must impose a conscious intellectual order to contrast and control, guess what?
Human behavior.
No, what is the human behavior?
Well, almost instincts or nature.
No, yeah. But what is the human for the planet Earth?
Oh, we're supposed to be stewards, or according to biblical.
No, reality.
Oh, in
What is
reality, we're
the
just
human position?
we're
We are,
animals.
for the planet Earth, the apex predator.
Yes. Top dog.
We commit predation or kill anything else on the planet, and we do it better than anything else. All species on the planet have to be protected by us from ourselves, otherwise, we will cause it to be extinct.
Wow.
Great white sharks, killer whales, lions, tigers, grizzly bears, polar bears, wolves, hyena, every goddamn thing on this planet lives now at our
Pleasure.
sufferance.
Yes.
No, sufferance. We suffer it to exist, except bacteria and pathogens like that.
Mm. I,
But you see, other than the micro and the mini, everything else on the macro level, we kill, we domesticate,
mm,
we breed,
mm-hmm.
we raise, we rear, or we eat.
Yes.
So, in other words, all of this is caught up into the thing of what is necessary for us to exist in one sense and what we must control because it is an excess.
Wow. That's true conservation for those, who are against hunters. When we go out and kill deers or turkeys or whatever, we're doing that to conserve the herd. If we let it
Exactly.
rain on a herd.
We had a problem here in Memphis. There was a herd of deer on a place called President's Island, which is generally uh, commercial. Okay,
Okay.
the hunter said we need to go kill it. No, you can't kill the deer. Well, the herd got up to 150 when people were saying we need to start letting a select group of hunters draw lots and go kill the deer with shotguns so the projectiles don't carry too far and endanger somebody. Oh my God, no. Then the herd got up to 250. People were saying we need to go do something about it. It got up to 300 or so. It got up to 500.
Oh my
It
God.
got up to 600. And what happened?
It probably
They
collapsed.
overate the food source and the
Yeah.
population crashed down to about 25 or 30. That
Mm,
was all that could survive after the rest of them had eaten up all the food.
mm, mm, mm.
The problem was is all these carcasses were rotting and the
Yes.
place smelled like a cesspool,
Mm.
a charnel house for weeks because the population of deer overbred and overate their food source and there was no predation to keep them in check.
Right. No natural predators. They've been run off years ago. Bear and all that. So.
Well, we are the natural predators. See, there's an interesting thing going, and I study paleontology, and I'm beginning to wonder about the end of the period dominated by dinosaurs. the Cretaceous that ended about 66 million years ago when a massive asteroid struck.
Right.
The number of dinosaurs in terms of types was dropping, but the absolute number of dinosaurs was not. It's almost there was like a human-like entity that was killing off certain inconvenient types, while
Whoa.
others that were food sources on a large scale were prospering. That sounds like us with cattle,
Yes.
sheep, goats, ducks, chickens, turkeys, and such like.
Right. You never heard of an endangered cow? Endangered chicken?
No, but everything else is endangered.
Mm-hmm.
But just like cows, chickens, goats, and stuff were prospering, certain large species of dinosaur were prospering, but the number of species was dropping.
Rapidly.
Yeah,
Rapidly.
the tyrannosaurs were prospering. The raptors, as they call them in Jurassic Park, were prospering. The ceratopsians, large herbivores, were prospering. The duckbills or hadrosaurs were prospering.
But everything else.
And birds were prospering, but everything else was kind of in danger.
Dang.
Interestingly enough, dinosaurs now said to still be alive. It's just all of them left are birds.
Right. They're chicken and all that, whatnot.
They're dinosaurs.
I mean, what if some of the dinosaurs, certainly during the dinosaurs era, there were dinosaurs that lived in caves, similar to, some of the huge cave systems that we have nowadays, even have weather patterns and rivers in these caves. I'm wondering if there's any possibility of there being a little pocket of, not,
No, but
no,
they're a bunch of them. They're very prosperous. They just all happen to be theropods, and the theropods are birds.
right,
Now they've been manipulating chickens and emus by
yes,
turning on the hormones. They've got embryonic dinosaurs that have tails, and instead of beaks, they have teeth, and instead of wings, they've got three-fingered hands and arms.
oh God. The dinosaurs, Judge, had to go away for a reason. They had to, let's
No,
keep that in
they
mind.
just got killed off.
Yeah, they do. Because if not, we couldn't live on this earth with that type of action.
I know we could. We could now, but we couldn't evolve to this point with that kind of action.
Right. Yeah, now obviously we can keep them contained. Even if they was to get out, that would just be a hunting trip of a lifetime for some lucky hunter. But, the thing about it is, because I did read a report about that, about them claiming that they are going to try to bring back some ancient species of animals.
Well, they don't have to. They can recreate them. See, birds are dinosaurs. So all you do is genetically manipulate them or embryonically manipulate them by turning certain genes on and off, and you get the beak going in terms of being replaced by jaws and teeth. You get the wings gone and replaced by arms and hands, and you get the stub Pope's nose replaced by a tail,
Wow.
and you got the dinosaur.
But now we're only dealing with the birds. If we was to go into lower
I mean,
mammal,
they're doing that with embryonic birds, chickens and emus. Emus are kind of big birds.
mm-hmm,
They're neck below ostriches in size,
but
so
they're
they're big.
aggressive. They did kill that one guy. There was a story a couple of days ago. Some guy, I believe in Australia, was grown or had some, and he fell or something, and the bird killed him. The emu.
Yeah, well, yeah, but they're making dinosaurs out of the emus. They just haven't let them hatch, but they got the embryos that they euthanize when they get ready to hatch. But they've got tails, hands, claws. Uh, Instead of beaks, they've got jaws and teeth.
Wow, that's crazy. That is so crazy. I mean, a part of me, because I love sci-fi and things that I would love to see a Jurassic Park per se. But then another side of me, what was the conclusion of Jack? It really didn't go that well. You know, a lot of people died and this and that. But I think that would be amazing to actually bring forth like a woolly mammoth, saber-toothed
Well,
tiger.
they are clone. They can clone mammoths now. They just ethically have not done so. With the dinosaur thing, they don't need to clone them. They can grow them by simply controlling the enzymic action that takes place in an egg, so that instead of growing a chicken, you grow one of the ancestors of the chicken, which is a theropod dinosaur. Instead of growing an emu to hatch out of the egg, you grow an ancestral theropod, which is a dinosaur.
Wow. So I mean,
See, birds are theropods. Tyrannosaurs were theropods. It's an interesting thing about tyrannosaurs. They may actually be devolved birds, where they turn into birds and devolve down into flightless, and what you get is raptors and T-Rexes or tyrannosaurs.
but why would evolution go in reverse like that?
Because well, look at the ostrich. Look at the emus, they can't fly. Look at penguins, they can't fly.
That's true. And I guess it's sort of a point of view suggesting that flying is better than walking. I guess it's the environmental factors that should be.
Depends on how big they are.
Yes.
They've got some predatory birds, even here in North America, that Indians were around when they were around.
Is that
And
sacred bird,
they,
the thunderbird that you're talking about, that they draw? Or
no,
is that?
that's something else. It flies. These are a kind of raptorial bird that's 10 feet tall
Oh
and
God.
weighs 800 pounds with claws, and they had never before found the wings to these things, but now they found a few with the limbs, and guess what? They don't have wings. They've got one large claw on what amounts to an atrophied hand with a smaller second claw.
And is a membrane going to like their body to or anything like that, or they're just?
No, they just have a hand with a claw.
Oh, that's a beast. And a beak. I'm assuming for the head.
Yeah,
Oh my
10
God.
feet tall and 800 pounds worth of predatory animal. Now, they've got a koval, which is an interesting bird. I've seen them at the Memphis Zoo. Even when they're grown, at the knuckle of the wing, guess what they have? They've got two clawed fingers.
Just like that one creature.
Dinosaurs.
Wow.
Like if you've seen the latest reconstruction of a raptor,
Not the latest one. I mean, I've seen the one where they added color to the scales.
oh no, they're feathered. They look like big ass road runners. I used to have road runners on my property. They killed. I saw two road runners kill a rattlesnake in front of me.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a road runner doesn't look like the cartoon road runner. He is a big bird, about 4 feet long, and he stands about a foot and a half, going on 2 feet high. They go coo, coo, coo. That's how they sound. And in the morning at this place I had in California, they'd hop up on the bench outside a picture window in the front living room, and they'd stare in early in the morning.
Like you're on the exhibit, like you're in the zoo.
Yeah, yeah, really. And they weren't afraid of you. They'd hang out in the backyard. They wouldn't run when you came out there. They'd kill all the songbirds, so you had to be careful where you put the feeders.
Oh, they were. Oh man.
And they'd kill snakes. They'd kill gophers. They'd kill snails. They'd kill uh, chipmunks, all kinds of shit.
Man, they're
But
like.
watching them kill snakes was fascinating. Big rattlers, too.
And they worked as a team to take it on, or.
Yeah, I saw them kill a 6 foot long rattlesnake.
Holy shit.
Big one. And they sat there, 3 of them ate it.
Oh, see, that's. Wow. This is what I'm saying. This planet is amazing.
And I like Roadrunner and Coyote. I mean, they probably could have given Coyote a good run for the money, but they wouldn't be ducking out of the way. They'd be going after his ass. I saw him chase some, by the way, on my property. I had a ranch.
Well, for those who don't know, coyotes are vicious. We have them out this way here in Missouri, and they're vicious little animals, man. They're not to be
Well,
trifled with.
sometimes I had a place when I was taping in Beverly Hills. Every morning, if I get up at 2 o'clock and go out, there would be a coyote taking a walk every morning down the sidewalk about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. He'd just be checking it out. You'd whistle, he'd look at you and nod at you, keep on going about his business.
I cannot imagine a
There are two
coyote in
of them
Beverly
that
Hills.
hang around my place here in Germantown, which is Memphis, Tennessee.
How big are these dogs? About like 4 foot long, kind of wiry
About
looking.
40 pounds,
Yeah.
50 pounds worth of dog.
I mean, let them pack up on you and catch you outside. They're no joke.
Well, I had a 15-pound Pomeranian that fought three of them off. He got chewed up, but he didn't get killed. He fought them off.
Wow, a Pomeranian.
Well, he was 15 pounds, and he was a very large throwback. Pomeranians originally were hunting dogs in Pomerania, Germany. They were 40, 45 pounds,
But they've been
and
reduced
they
down
were
in
bred
size.
down from sled dogs.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I mean, I know this is a weird question, but what's your dog's name?
Oh, he's dead now. He died at 15. He was Bosco. He was a black palm.
Oh,
He,
well,
he was really smart, athletic. He thought he ran everything.
well, what is your favorite breed of all the dogs? If you
Well,
have
I
one.
had wound up before I got divorced. I had three remaining palms, two remaining palms after the big one died, and two Rhodesian Ridgebacks who were lean and muscular, still growing, and 125 pounds apiece.
Wow, now that's a big dog.
Oh, yeah. You know what they were bred to do?
What?
Hunt African lions.
Oh, so they have to be beastly.
Yeah, but they were nice and friendly to people because their job was to defend the home front.
Wow. Now,
I
were
mean,
these
my wife
dogs?
had them, so like every morning, she'd tell them okay, and they'd hop up in the bed and cuddle up.
I know.
The one Tom Bosco got to sleep up there 24, whatever he wanted to, but he died. The other two, one of them, the senior one, got to come up there afterwards, and then the two Ridgebacks would be able to pop up there in the morning. They slept in the bedroom, but down on the floor on their little pallets every evening.
See, that's what I'm talking. We, have a dog here as well, and she had run away. And to show you just how weird the dynamics of the whole family was depressed. The kids, the wife, everybody was really sad. We obviously found her. She came back home. But the thing that I noticed is that now that she's been back since, she's like doesn't run away. I think it was more terrifying for her getting
Yeah, it
lost,
is.
than for us. And it's like I've watched this dog. She has more sense to her than most human beings. This thing she does. You can look at her a certain way. She'll do certain things, and it's like, how can people ever think? I mean, I know that we're the top because we can kill, but I think certain people think that other animals have no like emotions or no sense about them, and those are obviously people who have never really, I mean, I know you can take this thought too far and give animals traits as humans, which is totally wrong, but animals in their own right, especially dogs and cats, obviously pets here in the United States, they do have a certain intelligence about them. I can't really describe it all the way, but once you're linked in with that animal, like I said, I can look at this dog, our dog, baby girl, and just say a couple of things, maybe not even like just, she'll come to me, let me pet her, or else, she'll get out the way or something. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just don't get how people do not want to treat, even though, I believe in hunting and conserving The animal. I just don't understand why people do not believe that animals have quote unquote feelings.
Well, yeah, you food animals and then predatory animals. I had a Congo African gray parrot. I let him get kept by a friend who used to raise them, but he escaped. I did that because I had to break up and get away from the home place.
Mm-hmm.
He would get taught when I took him to birdie brunch once a month at this place that was a parrot boarding house or recovery place. And there were two other African Greys who were in their 30s who would teach him. They lived to be 80, 85 years old.
Wow.
And this guy was young, but he could count, and the ones that were teaching him, along with me, could do arithmetic, multiply and divide. They could talk. They are rated as one of the 4 sentient terrestrial species on the planet. That's humans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and bonobos, and Congo African gray parrots. They are supposed to be able to get as intelligent and able as 8-year-old humans.
Wow.
The 35-year-old could, all right, 8 times 2, 16, take away 3. 13,
Right.
ask me something hard. Wow, and they could say their alphabet, spell words, and I tell you what used to freak me out. I had a green cheek conure who was in the cage across from the young African gray, and they love to watch Discovery Channel stuff on dinosaurs. So I went out and bought some DVDs on dinosaurs, and they love the ones on T-Rexes. Play again, play again. The African gray would say, "Once the ancestor, once the ancestor." You mean the
Whoa.
T-Rexes? Yeah, yeah. And they'd be raptured. And
Wow.
Gray would say, "Ooh, ooh, mighty ancestor." I say, "God
Wow.
damn, these guys are getting off on this."
You're making like parent
Um,
dissidents. We are going to retrieve our ancient glories, guys.
yes. Uh, I experienced at the Memphis City Zoo when I was a judge. They had 3 Congo African Greys on loan. And I had one dumb ass son of a bitch that I'd required to do community service at the zoo, so they had him down there cleaning up. So I was there talking to the bird curator, and this motherfucker was down there fucking with the parrot, the Congo African Greys, and it starts like, ah, ah, get away, get away. You know, with the bird, big dummy, too dumb to talk to, too dumb to talk to. Bird, get away, big dummy. And the curator was looking at me. I said, "Yeah, he's got an IQ of about 74. He's a dummy." And the bird recognized this, told him to get away. He's too dumb to talk to. Now, years later, when I got mine, I would show up at this bird conservatory, and I remember he's there. He's about a year and a half youngster, and this 30-year-old bird walks up to him and said, "Hi." My bird looked at him. The older one said, "Hello." Mine looked at him. He said, "Hello." You know what this bird said? "Speak when spoken to." And my bird said, "Hello." And the older one said, "Better, learn manners." And stalked off. What the hell? So I'm talking to a person sitting to my left, and I feel something tap me on my right elbow, and I look over and it's the grown gray. He said, "Don't worry, teach manners. He learned, do better."
Wow.
He said, "He'll be okay," and walked off. Bird just had a conversation with me.
That's awesome, Judge. I'm serious. That's all. I mean,
Not all parrots are that smart, but Congo African greys have been declared sentient on the same level with chimps, gorillas, and people. They suspect some certain whales and dolphins or killer whale or orca are that intelligent. But I mean, these guys really can carry on a conversation with you. They don't just parrot shit back. They actually have a message and they're communicating with you.
That's amazing. I mean, to think about just how small their brain, literally how small their brains are in comparisons of ours, and for them to do that type of communicational feat is absolutely amazing to me.
Well, it's not how big your brain is, it's how big it is in proportion to your body. Now, remember this thing about dinosaurs. Guess which has the fourth